Monster Synthesis Master. Chapter 441. The person who rushed to the front line to help. Gain a firm foothold? Link laughed when he heard Ren Yi's choice of words. It was easier said than done to gain a firm foothold in the Red Dragon Dagger. Against the Machinery Faith and the Wasteland Gang, who had astonishing mobility, they would have to pay a bloody price to defend the Red Dragon Dagger. However, Lin Ke had no intention of blaming Ren Yi. After all, what Ren Yi saw was the present, while what he saw was the future. Very good, but be aware that the enemy's reinforcements are very fast, and their mobility is still stronger than ours, so we must constantly send players to the front line to form an effective defense mechanism. At the same time, we must ensure that the front line and humans get their supplies, ammunition, food, and all sorts of materials must be safely delivered. Don't worry, General, I'll make the proper arrangements. Link thought about it for a moment. The front line was led by the players, so it would definitely be chaotic when the enemy attacked. The construction work would also be in disorder. I'll send Li Zijun, the captain of the fox hunting special forces, to the front line to supervise the battle. She'll be the commander-in-chief and be responsible for everything related to the Scarlet Dragon Dagger. You two should communicate well. Ren Yi was overjoyed. Although I've assigned all the Inhumans for this mission, I'm still a little worried. It's the safest choice for the general to send Captain Li to the front line. This mission was completely led by Ren Yi, so he naturally wanted to achieve something. Now that Link assigned him Captain Li Zijun at the front line, it could be said that he was safe. After ending the call with Ren Yi, Link immediately called Commander Mun. General Lin doesn't come to visit unless he has something to ask. He usually doesn't call me. What's the matter this time? Ever since Commander Mun relinquished his military power, he had been living a peaceful and comfortable life at home, raising flowers and walking his dog. Especially after a lifetime of hard work, now that he finally had time to rest and recuperate, his mental state was much better. Commander Mun, you really understand me? There's something I need your help with. The Mun commander, who was sunbathing in the rattan chair, had a curious expression on his face. He straightened his body and asked, "There's actually something that General Lin can't handle? Then I'll have to listen carefully." Link didn't try to hide it and said naturally, "I need Captain Li to help me with a mission. I need you to go to the desert to command the Inhumans." The Mun commander was stunned for a moment, and the corners of his mouth curled up. Li Zijun? He's also a member of the military, so General Lin can just order him directly. I'm already retired, so why do I need to do this? Link sighed helplessly. Commander Mun, we're considered old acquaintances, so there's no need to continue pretending. The fox hunting special forces will eventually be handed over to Benjamin. Li Zijun can be considered your family guard and my friend. This mission will play a vital role in the war at the front line. I'm assured to hand this mission over to him. It can also be considered as gilding his gold for his future higher position. Commander Mun was stunned for a moment before he burst into laughter. If that's the case, I'll thank General Lin for your appreciation on behalf of my son and Xiao Li. The two of them chatted for a while before hanging up the phone. Lin Ke massaged his cheek muscles. Although it felt good to have two best actors acting together, it was also very tiring. Not long after he hung up the phone, Li Zijun's call came. General, Li Zijun of the Fox Hunting Special Forces is here to report. You can contact the Deputy Director of the Military Intelligence Office, Ren Yi, for the details. But I have to remind you that if you can do this task well, I will arrange for you to enter the army and serve as the Chief of Staff of the Shadow Army. Li Zijun's mind went blank. He had thought that it would be a simple mission, but he did not expect that it would involve the transfer of personnel. In the past, the highest-ranking commanders of the four armies of Shandu were the four commanders. However, after Link became the commander-in-chief of the Shadow district, he had full authority over the four armies. In order to show his respect to the four commanders, he announced that he would no longer be giving out commander ranks. Thus, the highest rank in the four armies was postponed and became the chief of staff. Promoting Li Zijun to the chief of staff of the Shandu army was equivalent to the authority and status of the previous Mun Kingdom commander. However, once he became the army's chief of staff, what would happen to the fox hunting special forces? Who would he hand them over to? The next second, Li Zijun suddenly realized. Who else could the fox hunting special forces be handed over to? Naturally, the son would inherit the father's career and hand it over to Benjamin. As a result, this mission had an additional color of power inheritance. Don't think that this mission is just for show. It's very dangerous to fight on the front line. Link said in a serious tone. Li Zijun's eyes lit up when she heard about the battle at the front line. What he couldn't accept the most was to go through the motions and then entrust himself with heavy responsibilities. Although he was strong enough, he couldn't accept such behavior. He felt that it was an insult to his profession. However, when Li Zijun heard that it was a battle on the front line, the corners of her mouth almost reached her ears. As expected, Link understood her the best. All right, I'll contact Deputy Director Ren immediately. Li Zijun could not wait to hang up the phone. As a soldier and the captain of the special forces, the Shitti's Soldier King was really coming back this time. There's one more thing, said Link, quickly stopping him. When you get to the front line, you can pay more attention to a player called Lang Feng. I heard that he's also a special forces soldier in the player world. If you think he's good, you can consider helping him. All right, I'll keep an eye out when we reach the front line. Does General have anything else to say? Nothing else. As soon as Link finished speaking, only the busy tone was left on the phone. Link laughed. Li Zijun was a war fanatic. She couldn't wait to fight when she heard there was a war. It was also Link's plan to help Lang Feng. Lang Feng was a retired Special Forces soldier on the Blue Planet. In his previous life, he had also been ravaged by Li Zijun in the game and became a glorious Special Forces soldier in Shitu. He had also played this niche profession to the point of perfection and had even set off a small Special Forces craze. Link believed that even if he didn't ask, Li Zijun would be able to discover Lang Feng's special qualities at the front line and train him. Now that he had asked for it, both Li Zijun and Lang Feng owed Link a favor. Meanwhile, Lin Kei's plan to create spokespersons for the various classes was also progressing steadily. Li Zijun was swift and decisive. After contacting Ren Yi, she quickly selected more than a dozen people and drove to the front line in military trucks. These dozen or so people were all experts in the Special Forces operation team, and could guide the Inhumans in detail when they reached the front line. After more than an hour's drive, a camouflage green military truck soon approached the front line. When they were still a kilometer away from the Scarlet Dragon Drake, Li Zijun heard loud gunshots. At this time, the sun was setting in the west, and he was making his final struggle on the horizon of the desert. Under the orange glow of the setting sun, one could see the muzzle of the Scarlet Dragon daggers spewing fire like dragons. The heavy machine gun bullets in the jeep's back were fired in rapid succession, forming a dense criss-cross fire net, making it difficult for the Inhumans in the Scarlet Dragon daggers to get out. However, the Inhumans in Shandu were not completely helpless. Li Zijun noticed that from a hidden corner at the top of the stone spike, the sound of the army's standard Evil Wolf sniper rifle could be heard from time to time. The muzzle was even equipped with a silencer. Every shot successfully hit the enemy operating the heavy machine gun in the jeep. Moreover, the position of each shot was different, and his whereabouts were mysterious and unpredictable. After each shot, he would move to another spot, making it difficult for the enemy to capture his position. The Machinery Faith and the Wasteland Gang also sent Outlanders to fight against the Outlanders. The jeeps were the main force of the mobility troop, while the Inhumans were driven to the front line, carrying high explosives, grenades, and other throwing objects to attack the gap from the side. There were also people holding explosive-proof shields approaching from the front to remove the roadblocks and destroy the trenches. Whenever these death squads came up, the players of Shandu who were hiding in the trenches and bunkers would get up and fight, pushing back all the enemies. The battle between the two sides was intense, and Li Zijun's eyebrows were solemn. Just as he had thought, the Scarlet Dragon dormitory was located between the Shandu and the Goria Canal. The enemy had high mobility troops and even played the Inhumans card, letting the Inhumans act as cannon fodder in the front to contain some of the firepower, while the remaining main force focused on attacking the side. "Bring me my gun." Li Zijun stretched out her hand, and the Special Forces member immediately handed Li Zijun a sniper rifle. It was made of a pure black matte material, with a slender and long body, as well as a large, disproportionate scope. This was a sniper rifle that Li Zijun had chosen and assembled himself. Everything was built according to his hands and habits. The bullets were also specialized sniper armor-piercing bullets, which could even penetrate tank armor. Li Zijun held the gun and jumped directly from the driver's seat to the roof of the car. The assistant driver immediately took over the driver's seat in one go. After loading the gun and aiming, Li Zijun half-squatted on the roof of the car. Even though the car was moving up and down in the sea of sand, it did not affect Li Zijun's aim. She locked her sights on the bald mercenary who was the most ferocious in shooting. Bang! Bang! The sniper rifle, which did not have any noise-cancelling measures, emitted a cluster of flames, and the bullet arrived in an instant. The bald mercenary, who was still shouting and shooting madly, had his head blown into pieces. His skull was split into pieces, and his brain matter and blood splattered on everyone in the jeep. Because his head had exploded, the artery that connected his neck spurted out blood like a fountain. His body stiffened and staggered for a long time before he finally fell. A headshot. This shot not only shocked the desert extremist forces, but also the Shatub players who were hiding in the Scarlet Dragon dagger. The people from the Machinery Faith and the Wasteland Gang followed the sound of the gunshot and saw a military truck that was like a small boat, rippling in the sea of sand, as well as Special Forces soldiers half-squatting on the top of the military truck and holding guns. Lang Feng also looked in the direction of the gunshot and saw the Shandu military truck as well as the capable and handsome NPC on the roof. Zui Feng's face was covered in dust as he looked through the telescope. He immediately recognized this person from his appearance. "It's Li Zijun. It's Li Zijun, the captain of the fox hunting special forces in Shandu." Zui Feng shouted in excitement. "Captain Li, a divine weapon is descending from the sky." Originally, the players had been suppressed by the other party's high mobility and strong firepower, and could only grit their teeth and defend. Now that the leader-level NPC Li Zijun had brought people to support him, Wind-Chasing Wolf suddenly felt that the sky was bright. Many players in Shandu had never seen Li Zijun before, but when they heard that she was the leader of the fox hunting special forces, their eyes lit up and they felt that they were saved. Without waiting for the players to cheer, Li Zijun fired another shot. The enemy who was controlling the heavy machine gun in the back of the jeep was shot in the head again. 2 headshots in a row, and the shots were fired without any concealment, directly stunning the Machinery Faith and Wasteland Gang. "The reinforcements from Shandu are here. Turn around and focus fire on that military truck." The mercenaries of the Wasteland Gang shouted orders, and the mechanical zealot contacted his comrades through the chip. All the heavy machine guns in the jeeps began to turn and aimed at the military truck coming from the side door. Lang Feng saw that the enemy's heavy firepower had turned around and immediately ordered, "Everyone, attack! Cover the truck!" 15 minutes later, the rest of the armed jeeps fled, and they didn't even have time to pick up the bodies of their companions on the ground before they fled. The players of the Scarlet Dragon dagger were celebrating their new lease of life. Li Zijun brought 15 Special Forces members to the Scarlet Dragon carriage and announced, "Under the orders of General Lin, the Supreme Commander of Shandu, we are here to provide assistance to the Red Dragon Dormitory. We will temporarily take over the position of the frontline commander and be fully in charge of the Red Dragon Dormitory plan." Knowing that Li Zijun and the Special Forces were going to stay here, the players all revealed their weasel-like green eyes, as if they had seen a fat chicken. Although Li Zijun's strength and status were not as high as Link and John's, she was still a level 35 commander level NPC. Her strength should not be underestimated. After the players checked the information card, they found that Li Zijun's profession was still pugilist special forces, which was clearly a special profession. If he could perform well in the next few days, the other party's eyes might light up and he might even give him a job-changing mission. Especially since he was about to reach level 20, he could put his secondary class on the agenda. Just as the players were staring at Li Zijun with anticipation, Li Zijun suddenly asked, "Who is Lang Feng?" Everyone's eyes turned to look at Lang Feng, who was at the back of the team. Li Zijun saw the wolf sniper rifle in the other party's hand at a glance and understood. "So you're Lang Feng. Your performance just now was not bad." Li Zijun was very low-key in front of the commander, but in front of these inhumans, she had enough authority to speak. It was appropriate for her to praise him in her current identity. Just now, Lang Feng had used the wolf sniper rifle to pin down the enemy. His skillful marksmanship, keen sense of battle, and command had greatly shortened the duration of the battle, and no side issues had arisen. Li Zijun continued, "Before I came, General Lin told me that you were not bad. He asked me to pay more attention to you. It seems that you do have some skills. In the following period of time, you will be by my side." After saying that, he began to instruct his men to set up camp and set up communication points. When the players heard this, they all opened their mouths in disbelief. He had been looking forward to meeting this level 35 NPC leader, but in less than 5 minutes, the other party had picked Lang Feng. This turn of events had come too quickly. From Li Zijun's words, the players realized that the person behind the scenes was Lin Ke. That must be related to Lang Feng's previous 2 missions with Lin Ke. After a brief moment of shock, Lang Feng immediately regained his senses. He was ecstatic and quickly followed Li Zijun's footsteps. Looking at the Soldier King's back, Lang Feng felt that his career as a Special Forces soldier was finally settled. Chapter 442 Eavesdropping on the Wind and Cloud. Li Zijun's arrival caused quite a stir at the front line. Moreover, according to Li Zijun's words, those machine fanatics who had escaped had recognized his identity, so the Scarlet Dragon Drake would suffer an even more intense attack. The days after that were not going to be easy. As Lang Feng had made the appropriate arrangements, Li Zijun had only assigned some more tasks in the details. The players who had just finished the battle received another task from Li Zijun to comfort themselves. After that, tents, radio transmitters, antennas, communication devices, small diesel generators, and solar panels were all set up. What excited the players the most was the 5 mortars and 10 portable rocket launchers pulled out of the military truck by the Special Forces soldiers, as well as more than 10 boxes of bullets, ammunition, and military rations. With these weapons and equipment, they would not be suppressed the next time they faced the Desert Coalition army. The escaped armed jeeps returned to the outer defense circle of the city before sunset. The surviving mechanical zealots looked for the mechanical warriors in a panic. Ever since Link, John, and the others had snuck into the city disguised as mechanical warriors and caused a great deal of destruction, the city had been very strict with the inspection of people coming in and out of the city. Unless there were special circumstances, the mechanical zealots on the ground were forbidden from entering the city. This also led to the temporary closure of the monthly ascension ceremony, cutting off the path of advancement for these zealots. The mechanical zealot in the desert was extremely ruthless to the intruders. After the battle with the Shudu Outlanders, they became more aggressive, as if they wanted to release all the anger in their chest at once. "We have important information that we need to see the pioneer." The mechanical zealots were anxious and travel-worn. The mechanical warrior in charge of guarding the passage below the city raised his gun and pointed at the mechanical zealot. "Stand there and don't move. Let's go through the identification first." The machinery fanatics were intimidated by the aura and immediately stopped in place. All their weapons were locked, and they raised their hands for inspection. The green laser scanned through a few zealots, and their information appeared on the panel of the mechanical warrior. After careful comparison, their identities were verified. Okay. There's no problem with your identities, but according to the new temporary management rules of the city, you can't enter the city to meet the pioneers. If there's any important information, just tell me. I'll contact the Steel Elder Council to convey the message. The mechanical warrior's cold and unquestionable words were like a huge steel curtain that blocked the zealot. The zealots looked at each other and hesitated before saying, "When we were patrolling today, we found the Shitu Outlanders at the Red Dragon Ridge. They seem to be setting up camp there." The mechanical warrior looked at them calmly. "If that's what you're talking about, then the pioneers already know." No, the zealots said, waving their hands. "When we were about to attack the Scarlet Dragon Drake, a military truck suddenly charged at us and attacked us from the front and back. We recognized the leader to be Li Zijun. It looks like she's here at the front line to command the Scarlet Dragon Dagger." "Li Zijun?" The mechanical warrior's eyes suddenly became stern. "You mean Li Zijun, the captain of the fox hunting special forces in Shadow? Are you sure you're not mistaken?" The zealots nodded in unison, and the zealots equipped with reconnaissance modules even took out video clips of the battle. Li Zijun's height, body shape, combat characteristics, as well as the military rank and armband on her clothes, were all completely consistent with the information found by the spies of the machinery faith in Shandu. The mechanical warrior transmitted the intelligence and video information brought by the zealot to his own mechanical equipment. Then, he said coldly, "You can go back and wait for the news. I'll give the news to the pioneers now. If nothing goes wrong, you can wait for your rewards." After the mechanical warrior finished speaking, he communicated with his companions and quickly entered the mechanical city via the elevator. He then reported the news to the Steel Elder Council. After the Steel Elder Council saw the video evidence, they began to discuss countermeasures with the pioneers. In the holographic video, Li Zijun's information was listed. From the time he joined the army to his achievements in each period, the content was detailed. Li Zijun was the king of the Shitu soldiers, the leader of the fox hunting special forces, and the capable general of the Mun Kingdom. Her status was only below the 4 commanders, and she was a proper pillar of support. This is definitely a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. As long as we get rid of Li Zijun, we'll definitely be able to dampen the spirit of Shandu. I'm more curious about why Shandu has sent so many outlanders, even the military's main force, to Red Dragon Carriage. What's their intention? Could it be that they're planning to press on and use the Scarlet Dragon Dagger as a bridgehead to reduce our area of activity in the desert? They've planted a nail right under our eyes, so they must have taken action. It's a pity that all of our spies in Shandu have been eliminated, and our multiple attempts at infiltration have all ended in failure. We don't understand the internal situation in Shandu at all, nor do we know what the sudden move is about. There were originally 20 elder seats in the Steel Council, but now, almost half of them were empty. This scene was all thanks to the last sneak attack. The city had been a holy land for all the machinists, but it was now in ruins. After the mechanical elder expressed his opinion, they all looked at the mechanical pioneers in the holographic image. The mechanical pioneer, Dr. Zhao, was facing the control panel with his back facing the elders in the holographic image. Since we don't know the enemy's movements, we should find a way to figure it out. Dr. Zhao slowly raised a mechanical arm. Activate Skynet and monitor the radio signals of the Scarlet Dragon Daggers and Weeping Valley. The machinery elders looked at each other and said hesitantly, "Pioneer, activating Skynet will increase the energy burden by about 12%. Are we going to be defeated? There's a 40% chance that they're taking over the Scarlet Dragon Ridge to take advantage of the winter to encroach on our territory, and a 60% chance that they've discovered some important resources there. From tomorrow onwards, order the frontline personnel to increase the pressure on the Scarlet Dragon Drake by the day and force the enemy to increase their supply. At that time, we'll arrange for our troops to focus on the materials they're transporting and besiege them to fight for reinforcements. Dr. Zhao's words made the machine elders suddenly realize, and the fog in front of them suddenly cleared. After stealing the enemy's communication information, the purpose of occupying the Scarlet Dragon Dagger, when the reinforcements would arrive, what resources, and when they would arrive would all appear in front of them without any disguise. Dr. Zhao performed a series of authorization operations on the console and issued instructions one by one. 5 semicircular signal cauldrons rose from the data area of the floating mech city. 2 of them were aimed at the Red Dragon daggers in the northwest of the city, and the other 3 were aimed at the Weeping Valley 20 kilometers away. If there's nothing else, you may all leave. The machinery elders stood up in unison, their arms slanted forward. Long live the machinery! The holographic image was turned off, and Dr. Zhao continued to work on the console. The data panel in front of him had a DNA image, and the small frame next to it was constantly analyzing the battle images of the night. John's various actions were dismantled into programs for analysis and comparison, and useful battle information was saved. Under the light of the blue holographic screen, the corner of Dr. Zhao's mouth could be seen. Even though the infiltration last month had dealt a heavy blow to the city, it wasn't without rewards. Link and John's infiltration had not only damaged the city, but also brought them a big gift. When the ultimate divine weapon is completed, the entire world will be able to see the power and beauty of machinery. When a tangible truth appears, everyone will understand that machinery is the only correct path on Wasteland. Dr. Zhao's 2 mechanical arms rested on his chin, and his excitement suddenly became deep. All living beings are in misery. They are still living in the lamentations constructed by hope and comfort. In order for them to see the true colors of the world and for the goal of the harmonious world, some sacrifices are inevitable. Soon, a wisp of data consciousness from Dr. Zhao entered the 5 signal receivers and captured the looming radio wave signals in the air. Then, the radio wave signals were translated into text messages and corresponding audio signals, accompanied by noisy interference sounds, slowly sounded. I've successfully arrived at the Red Dragon carriage. The situation at the front line is tense. The enemy has recognized me, and the subsequent attacks may be more intense. I need the military intelligence department to continue providing material assistance so that I can better carry out my work at the Red Dragon carriage and complete the tasks assigned by the General. The Military Intelligence Division will fully cooperate with Captain Li's operation. Tomorrow's supplies and equipment will be delivered by the Inhumans at 2 p.m. sharp. After the 2 intercepted voice conversations were played, the smile on the mechanical pioneer's face became even more intense. Before the ultimate weapon took shape, he would use this eavesdropping to warm up the feast. The next day, Link was invited by Dr. Ludwig, Dave, and Helen to the Underground Research Center to witness the completion of the data center and the official launch of the Tokamak Energy Ring. Thank you for your hard work during this period of time. I thank you on behalf of the 45 million residents of Shandu. The 3 of them were overwhelmed by the unexpected favor. They hurriedly retreated and waved at Link, who bowed slightly. It's not necessary, it's not necessary. This is my duty, I can't afford such a big gift from General. The blueprint and design were provided by the boss. I just made it according to it, so I didn't make any contributions. Helen was even more direct. I'm still a kid. It was already late when I joined the project. I was just a passerby. The 3 of them managed to shirk all the credit in just a few sentences. Link was speechless. If it wasn't their credit, was it mine? It seemed, possibly, maybe Ying was. Helen, said Link, you're the person in charge of the Tokamaki project, so you'll start first. With Dave and Dr. Ludovic's encouraging eyes, Helen walked to the console and pressed the official start button. As the giant Tokamak ring was connected, the cat's crystal in the center reacted with the pure cobalt metal, overflowing with blue energy particles. Under the restraint and protection of the energy ring, it began to produce a steady stream of energy. The energy flowed through the tubes. Helen looked at the nodes that were lit up on the digital panel and quickly reported, Military Intelligence, everything is normal. Windhowl Castle, everything is normal. Dr. Ludwig and Dave also went to their respective positions and reported, large-scale defensive force field, energy supply normal. The data center's energy supply is also fine. The energy of the giant tokamak ring would be the energy supply for the entire Weeping Valley, and from then on, it would be a clean and efficient energy source. Helen had an excited smile on her face. Although she didn't put much effort into the giant tokamak device, she felt honored to be the project leader. She ran to Link excitedly and reported, "General, the energy supply is normal." Dr. Ludwig and Dave also returned. The large defensive force field and the data center are also normal. "General, should we activate the large defensive force field to see its effect?" Dave suggested. "No," said Link, raising his hand. "This must be our trump card. As long as the enemy doesn't use large long-range firepower, we won't show ourselves. When the enemy is full of confidence and is ready to knock on the south gate of Shandu, we will show them a large defensive force field and make them despair." Link looked at the three of them and asked one last question, regarding the control of Troy's entry into the data center. "Have you all done your job?" The three of them nodded repeatedly. This area was jointly managed by the three of them, and it was extremely dangerous, so they didn't dare to take it lightly. Now that the energy is connected, you can process the verification again. After making sure that everything is fine, I will ask Fu to bring Troy over. The three of them nodded with certainty. "Okay, that's all for today. I'll have the spy mouse upload the content to the data center." Link was just about to leave when his phone rang. For some reason, Link could hear a hint of urgency in the familiar ringtone. The call was from the Military Intelligence Department. "General, the Inhumans and supplies we sent to the Red Dragon dormitory today were attacked by the enemy's mobility troops halfway. Most of the Inhumans were killed and all the supplies were lost. At the same time, the Scarlet Dragon Drake was attacked by the enemy for 2 hours. In the end, under Captain Li's oath to protect it with his life, they successfully repelled the enemy." Ren Yi's breathing was rapid and his voice was trembling. If the defeat of the four commanders' main forces at night was the worst defeat in Shandu, then today's interception of the supply team was the first defeat the military intelligence had ever suffered. Link furrowed his brows. He didn't expect the enemy to counterattack so quickly. The first wave of cobalt beetles breeding in the basement would not start working until tomorrow when they matured. He did not expect the conflict on the front line to be so intense. The Scarlet Dragon dagger must be in our hands. The first wave of losses didn't matter. He immediately began to arrange for the second wave of material distribution. "We can't let the front-line soldiers and Inhumans run out of ammunition." "Yes." Lin Ke hung up the phone with a dark expression. The three of them heard the conversation on the phone and didn't even dare to breathe. Link felt as if there was a cloud of fog in his head, but he couldn't figure out what it was. It was as if there was something important but he couldn't remember. Ying. Chapter 443 The sound transmission bug takes action, turning the tables. Link thought for a while but still couldn't clear the fog in his mind. He raised his head helplessly and saw Helen looking at him with her big, watery eyes. "Helen, have you finished preparing the weapons?" "If it's done, I'll take it with me this time." Helen immediately remembered this and patted her head. "Please wait a moment, I'll go get it now." After a while, Helen pushed in a big box. "There are a total of 8 weapons and equipment in here. 7 of them were made according to your requirements, but this equipment is a new energy weapon that I specially made for you. Although Ying knows that you may not need it with your strength, this is a small token of appreciation for saving me. I hope you don't mind." Helen spoke carefully, afraid that she would make a mistake. Helen's trembling voice betrayed her. Link could tell that she had prepared these words in advance. After saying that, Helen took out an exquisitely made wrist guard from the equipment box without explaining much. Link took the wrist guard and realized that it was different from the rest. It was made of alloy, but there was no metallic luster on the surface of the wrist guard, and its reflective rate was extremely low. Link could tell at a glance that the design was ingenious. It would be used at night to hide the user to the greatest extent and would not reflect light to expose his position. There were a few guiding currents on the metal wrist guard. Link put the wrist guard on his hand and light blue energy immediately appeared in the guiding currents. In the next second, a 30-40 centimeters long chi-powered blade made of pure energy popped out of the narrow gap of the metal wrist guard. Link's eyes brightened at the sight of the aura blade. In his previous life, although he had completed the first half of Dave's mission to save his granddaughter, he later encountered the Freedom Federation's general attack on the Machinery Faith and the Wasteland Gang. After that, Link didn't have the chance to participate in Helen's storyline as the Mother Machine God. They didn't even have any interactions. Link only knew that Helen had been studying machinery for 1 or 2 years and had become the Mother Goddess of Machinery on the Wasteland planet. Her talent was second to none. However, he had never personally experienced how powerful the Mother Machine Goddess was. However, after seeing the chi blade on his wrist guard today, Link was completely convinced. The tokamak device was actually a type of small controllable nuclear fusion reactor. The energy it produced was also clean and was commonly seen in version 2.0. It was the foundation and symbol of a novice planet's advancement into a space civilization. The weapons made from the tokamak energy were also more lethal and effective than conventional hot weapons. Helen had only been exposed to mechanical theory for less than a month, but she was already able to build a complete new energy weapon. This potential and talent were almost equivalent to John's assassin talent and Dr. Zhao's talent in machinery. Link used Detect to check the information on the new weapon. Support Style Energy Blade. Quality, Blue. Parameters, Attack Power 100-120, Length 37.8 cm, Weight 1.2 kg. Durability, 1000/1000. Equipment Requirement, above LV50. Attribute Bonus, Strength plus 25, Agility plus 25, Intelligence plus 25. Special Effect, Energy Blade. Powerful energy blade attacks deal 50 points of high energy particle burn damage. Can cut through most alloys on Wasteland planet. Armor Nemesis 200% damage to all types of armor. There were no fancy skills or descriptions. As a level 50 blue weapon, high attack and high additional elemental damage were its characteristics. The attack power written in white on the paper was comparable to the flickering dagger, and it had a 75-point attribute bonus. The most important point was that this propped chi blade did not conflict with daggers at all, because it was essentially a wrist guard, and it would have a miraculous effect at the critical moment of the battle. This equipment is not bad, I like it. Link accepted the equipment. Due to the feature of the tokamak device's miniaturization, the wrist guard wasn't bulky. Under the cover of his shirt and jacket sleeves, no one could tell that it was bloated or abnormal. After equipping the weapon, Link's strength jumped from 185 to 210. Hearing Link's comment, Helen finally heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that the equipment she had spent so much time and effort on had not been in vain. Lin K then scanned through the other items in the equipment box and checked their information. Just as Link had said, they were all normal prop equipment. They had high white damage and some armor penetration ability, but they did not have high attributes, high white damage, and high additional damage like Link. Moreover, because it was a close combat weapon, it had extremely high durability. Link carried the equipment box out of the underground research center. He then asked the driver to send the equipment box to the military intelligence office and asked Ren Yi to find a way to send the new equipment to the players of the Scarlet Dragon Dagger. Link read the forum and had a general understanding of what had happened in the Red Dragon Drake. The most popular discussion was about the strategic position of the Scarlet Dragon Dagger and the fact that Lang Feng, who had been chosen by Li Zijun, might activate a rare profession at level 20. However, no matter which discussion it was, they would all come to the same point: following Link would be a win-win situation. Link returned to the castle and checked on the growth of the cobalt beetles in the basement. The first batch of little ones had already matured, and the number of newborn cobalt beetles had reached 500 to 600. At this rate, there would soon be thousands of them, and the mining team would be able to transport cobalt ore from the Red Dragon armor continuously. However, when he thought about the attack on the supply team and the pressure from the frontline players holding on for a day, he couldn't bear it. With a wave of his hand, he arranged for 100 cobalt beetles to enter mining mode and start digging under the Vermilion Dragon Ridge. After making the arrangements, Link returned to his office and looked at all the tasks he had. Other familiar missions aside, Link's attention was focused on 2 missions. 1 main city mission Shandu, Energy Crisis. 2 main city mission Red Dragon Camp. The Energy Crisis mission required the large-scale development of Kate's crystals and cobalt ores. The Kaz crystal option had turned from grey to green, but the cobalite selection was still grey. Link had no idea how much he would need to meet the system's requirements. However, by the next day, 500 to 600 cobalt beetles would have grown up, and they would be able to mine a steady stream of cobalt ore from the Red Dragon daggers. This mission would be completed sooner or later. 300,000 experience, random blueprint design, an excellent event energy revolution. The event that would be activated after the completion of a main city mission was something that Link had experienced in the previous mission Shudagobi Oasis. He had sent Fu to complete the beast movement incident and obtained the purple quality dormant crystal. He had also discovered the blue mutated snail. The harvest was bountiful, and it laid the foundation for Link's future plans for Dragon City. After the completion of the Energy Crisis mission, Link was already looking forward to the activated Excellent Event Energy Revolution. According to his expectations, this incident should be related to Helen. As for the other mission, Red Dragon Dagon Camp, Link was also looking forward to seeing what the 2 skill books the system would give him. Just as Link was checking, the phone on the table rang again. Link picked up the phone. On the other end was Ren Yi's stammering and hesitating voice. General, the supply team sent to the front line at night was ambushed by the enemy again. The players were completely annihilated and the supplies fell into the enemy's hands. And according to Captain Li's news, the ammunition and supplies at the front line are running low. If the last time was an accident, then this time, the supply team was ambushed again. Link smelled a conspiracy. Link furrowed his brows as his mind whirred. How long did it take to gather the Inhumans and resources for this mission? Has the specific travel time been leaked? Link's first thought was that a traitor had appeared in the team and leaked the information. Ren Yi was in the office of the Military Intelligence Department. He frowned like Link and shook his head. No, because it's a temporary second mission recruitment. After the number of people and materials are ready, I only called the Red Dragon Dweller frontline to tell them the approximate time of arrival and to pay attention to receiving them. I personally contacted Captain Li about this. Even the Military Intelligence Department staff doesn't know the specific time. This was strange. Only Ren Yi and Li Zijun had confirmed the time through a conversation, but how did the enemy know their own movements? General, Ren Yi continued, I can't get rid of my suspicion in this matter. I request that I will personally lead the next transportation. Don't be impatient. Don't be flustered by the enemy's little tricks. Link's brain worked quickly. He then asked, what's the situation like this time? Have you learned the details from the Inhumans? Yes, Ren Yi replied. I've done some research after the Inhumans were resurrected. They said that they were suddenly ambushed while they were moving. The enemy either discovered them from a distance or suddenly appeared around them. They surrounded them and quickly annihilated them. Link's expression grew even more serious. In other words, the enemy had set up an ambush along the path we must pass to attack our people. But how do they know when we'll send people to deliver the supplies and which way they'll take? Ren Yi, who was on the other end of the phone, also fell silent. I'll come to the Military Intelligence Department and we'll talk face to face, said Link after some thought. Link had just left the Wind Howl Castle in his car. Looking at the brightly lit Shenmue city, he suddenly caught a flash of thought. It seemed that in his previous life, before the decisive battle between the Freedom Federation and the Machinery Faith, something similar had happened. It was said that the Freedom Federation's various operations would be obstructed and attacked by the enemy, and they would coincidentally appear at the Freedom Federation's designated location every time. The Freedom Federation's troops had once thought that there was a spy within their ranks, so they carried out a round of cleansing of the army and even wiped out the Machinery Faith spies in Shandu. Later, due to the repeated difficulties in advancing, the military simply adopted the most ancient method of communication: messenger pigeons. Only then did the problem of leaking secrets improve. In his previous life, Link had thought that it was a spy from the Machinery Faith and the Shandu. However, in this life, he had control of the entire Shandu and had eyes and ears everywhere. Furthermore, the spies from the Machinery Faith had been completely eliminated. There would be no problem of the secret being leaked, so he had overlooked this. But now, it seemed that even though he had already done so much, the information at the front line was still leaked for no reason. It was very similar to what he had encountered in his previous life. If that's the case, then it's obviously not the work of a spy, he. After Link arrived at the Military Intelligence Department, he immediately organized a third frontline transport to verify his conjecture. This time, the Inhumans were recruited in secret, and the amount of resources was very small. The entire process was blocked and sealed. After that, Link got Ren Yi to contact Li Zijun. The two of them agreed on a time for the third delivery of resources. The team also sneaked out of Shenmue City in the dark. After an hour and a half of waiting, Link soon received the results of the ambush on the third supply team. "General, this Bayan." Ren Yi looked at each other in dismay, his expression as if he had seen a ghost. Only Link, Ren Yi, and a trusted military salesperson knew about the entire mission. Moreover, the troops were also in the room while waiting. There was no possibility of communication or a leak. Could it be that we've seen a ghost? This time, we've sealed off all sources of information. There's no way there's any leak. On the other hand, Link's lips curled up. He had a vague idea. "Ren Yi, you've overlooked one point. There's one thing that you can't seal." "What?" Ren Yi asked excitedly. "Radio waves. It's very likely that the enemy has captured the signal of the military's telephone by eavesdropping, thus stealing the time of our operation and arranging for people to ambush us in advance." Ren Yi's face turned extremely ugly. The military's communication phones are all on a special channel, how could they just give up so easily? If the mechanical pioneers are personally involved, I believe it won't be difficult to decipher a radio signal. Link crossed his hands in front of his chest. Then what should we do now? Once our communication with the front line is monitored, our every move will be exposed to the enemy's attention. The Red Dragon dagger will definitely be lost. Captain Li, those Inhumans who participated in the mission, and your plan will all fail. Ren Yi did not continue. He was more worried that the entire communication in the Sand City would be invaded and eavesdropped by the enemy. Link was still smiling. Wasn't it a coincidence? He had just synthesized the sound bug, and the mechanical pioneers were already trying to eavesdrop. Wasn't this clearly giving the sound bug a chance to show itself? It's amazing to decipher radio signals, but that doesn't mean we have no other ways. We can even make use of the fact that the enemy thinks they have our radio signal to give them false information and launch a fatal blow. Ren Yi's mouth was wide open. He did not know why the general was still so confident in this situation. If his and Captain Li's phone was tapped, then the Military Intelligence Department's phone calls to other places could also be tapped. How was he going to spread this fake news? And Captain Li, who was more than 10 kilometers away, how would he know that this was fake news to cooperate with him? Ren Yi's head was in a mess. Now, organize a small group of suicide squads and send supplies to the front line. Remember, the amount of supplies must be small. Still sending? If we send them out, they will definitely be intercepted by the enemy. Ren Yi was puzzled. Link smiled. It's to give the enemy the illusion that our communication system is completely under their control. As for the real supply transportation team, they can go through the underground cave in the castle of Windhowl and head to the Red Dragon dormitory to transport the combat supplies. Chapter 444 The Night of the Oscar. Ren Yi had only known that there was a secret passage leading to the Goria Grand Canal in the Windhowl Castle, but he had never thought that there would be a tunnel leading to the Red Dragon carriage. Ren Yi's face was filled with shame. He lowered his head and said, "This is truly Qianqian's subordinate's fault. I'll have to trouble General to come out and formulate a strategy to deal with the aftermath." "King against king, general against general," said Link calmly without a change in expression. "It's obvious that the mechanical pioneers are making a move on Goria's side. It's only natural that I'm taking the blow myself." After a pause, he said, "All right, go and make the necessary arrangements. Remember, don't give the cat out of the bag when you make the call." "Yes." Ren Yi straightened his back and saluted, "I'll definitely complete the mission." No matter what, he was from Shako. If he couldn't even disguise himself and control his emotions, wouldn't his more than 10 years of experience as a special agent be fed to the dogs? An hour later, the two teams, one big and one small, were assembled. The smaller teams brought a small amount of supplies to the front line. Before they left, Ren Yi called Captain Li. On the phone, Li Zijun expressed her helplessness about the two caravans being robbed. The location of the robbery was only 3 to 4 kilometers away from the Scarlet Dragon dagger. In the dark night, she could see the distant gunfire, but Li Zijun was surrounded by the enemy and could not move. She could not help but watch as the Inhumans were completely annihilated and the supplies were taken away. "Don't worry, Captain Li. This time, I've reminded the transport team to stay away from the route where they were ambushed. They'll arrive at about 2 o'clock in the morning, so make sure to arrange for people to pick them up." Ren Yi's words made Li Zijun feel a lot more at ease. After all, he was also a well-known spy and special agent in Shako. After encountering 2 failures, he had definitely thought of a solution. "All right, I'll be waiting for good news at the front line," Li Zijun said with certainty. Ren Yi hung up the phone and sat on the chair, letting out a breath of turbid air. He was like a deflated balloon. He had already done everything he could, and the rest was up to heaven's will. Whether or not it was as the general had guessed, that the mechanical pioneers had deciphered the content of his conversation with Li Zijun by capturing the communication radio signal, it would be verified in another hour. Meanwhile, the remaining group followed Link back to Windhowl Castle. The players were overwhelmed by the unexpected favor. They could not believe that Link was the one leading the team on this mission. All of them were filled with hope and their eyes were filled with desire. They all hoped to become the second PRO, Bombarding Chicken, or Lang Feng who chased after the wind. When they arrived at Windhowl Castle's garden, the entrance to a 4-meter-wide underground cave appeared in front of them. After you enter the cave, just follow these cobalt beetles and you'll be able to reach the Vermilion Dragon dagger. The underground cave is complicated, so don't get left behind. It's a small matter if you can't get out, but if you go the wrong way and end up in enemy territory, I won't be able to save you." With that, Link released the 100 cobalt beetles from the box. The cobalt beetles lined up and entered the hole, feeling the aura left behind by their former companions, and went all the way to the Scarlet Dragon Dole. Hundreds of players, armed with supplies and ammunition from the Military Intelligence Department, entered the cave one by one without pushing, shoving, shouting, or making a fuss. They followed the steps of the cobalt beetles with flashlights in their hands. These late-night players all knew how precious it was to be able to carry out Link's personal mission. Although the players usually spoke without thinking, they didn't even dare to breathe loudly when they saw Link. They were afraid that their every move would anger him and lose their chance to get promoted and make a fortune. The few guilds that had followed Link had already made a lot of money. Whether it was level, equipment, or progress, they were far ahead of the ordinary players. This lead would turn into wealth in the near future. Take the Miracle Guild for example. Although it was one of the top 10 guilds in China, only the Wind Chaser, floating soft, had a place in the Hall of Fame. But now, he had taken all kinds of endorsements and advertisements, and it seemed that he was going to catch up with Long Xingtian. It was only then that Link realized how important influence was. If it was when he was not famous, this group of players would definitely not listen to his orders obediently. They would definitely come up to him and say some obscenities to see if they could trigger some plot or mission. Players entered the underground cave and began the quest under the leadership of the Cobalt Beetles. Link returned to his office and waited for the call from the Military Intelligence Department. Thump, thump, thump. The macaw opened the office door and asked, "You were invited to the Underground Research Center this afternoon. You haven't had dinner yet, right? I made you some supper." The macaw placed the meat porridge on the table, but its black and round eyes were darting around, trying to analyze what had happened from the clues on the table. However, there were no documents on the table. There was only a sound bug lazily lying on the table, which was very conspicuous. Link ate 2 mouthfuls of porridge and his stomach felt better. He had seen all of the macaw's little tricks and couldn't help but say, "There's no need to look for him. I'm waiting for a call." A phone call. Link looked at the time. It had been almost an hour since the players who were transporting the supplies left the Military Intelligence Department. He believed that there would be news soon. As long as the players were ambushed by the machinery faith again, he would be 100% sure that the mechanical pioneers had intercepted and eavesdropped on the phone line. "Yes, we're waiting for a call that will affect the entire Desert War." Ding-ling-ling. Just as Link finished speaking, the phone on the table rang. It was the Military Intelligence Department. Link pressed the speaker button, and an urgent voice came from the other end. "General, the supply team we sent out has encountered another obstruction." Ren Yi's tone was low, and one could imagine his bitter face just from his voice. Link pondered for a moment. 3 supply troops have been defeated on their way to the front line. It seems that the enemy has increased the number of patrols in the desert. Let's call it a day. I hope the front line can hold on for a while longer. Ren Yi sighed. It seems like that's the only way. I'll talk to Captain Li later. I hope they can hold on. The macaw at the side couldn't take it when it heard this. Its voice suddenly raised 3 octaves and loudly questioned, "What?" The supply troops of the Military Intelligence Department were eaten up by the machinery faith 3 times in a row. The macaw covered its head with its wings, its words filled with disbelief. It couldn't understand how the powerful army of Shandu, which had been suppressing the machinery faith and the Wasteland Gang, had become like this overnight. Where are the wild wolves and the army of Shandu? Send an army to protect them. The macaw was filled with confusion. Link moved forward slightly and said into the phone, "All right, that's all for now. We'll contact each other later." Link's lips curled into a smile after he hung up. The macaw flapped its wings in front of him. "Have you gone crazy from the shock? How can you still laugh in such a situation?" Link was in awe of his own wit. It was a wise decision to leave the macaw here when the phone rang. Its emotional outburst made the whole thing seem even more realistic. Even Dr. Zhao, the pioneer of machinery, couldn't analyze any suspicious points from the series of questions and emotions it had just asked. "Ole Gold, you did well just now." Link praised sincerely. The macaw sat on the chair and blinked its small eyes. "It's over, it's over. It looks like he's really stupid now, Ying Luo." Since the supply team had been ambushed, the players who had gone to the Scarlet Dragon Dagger from the underground cave should be arriving soon. Just as Link was deep in thought and the macaw was busy adding drama to itself, the voice transmission bug on the table suddenly emerged from the snail shell. Its 2 antennae rose high like a signal on a router. "Master, there is a signal. Do you want to answer?" Link then put the sound bug into his ear. "Hello? General, I'm Li Zijun. Can you hear me?" Li Zijun was also wearing a sound transmission bug. It was her first time using this thing and she was very curious as to whether it could be connected. I'm Link. I can hear you. Li Zijun heaved a long sigh of relief and replied, all the supplies have been received. We have plenty of weapons, ammunition, and daily necessities, enough for the front line to last for a few days. He didn't expect the general to have dug a tunnel under the Scarlet Dragon dagger, which greatly alleviated the crisis. I also saw the cobalt ore under the Red Dragon Ridge. General, please rest assured that I will defend this place until the end of the mission. Old Li, don't you think it's strange? The 3 transport teams that we sent out were intercepted by the enemy and there's a problem. How could Li Zijun not have noticed it? Now that Link asked, she could only answer, actually, I already noticed it the second time. However, the matter of a traitor is no small matter. Without concrete evidence, it will only cause our own people to be suspicious of each other, so I didn't make it public. It's fine. The last 2 supply teams are non-human teams I've arranged, and they're mostly carrying food. The small amount of ammunition is also incompatible with the zealots, so they can't use it even if they get it. The conclusion of Ren Yi and I's investigation is that the special signal of the Red Dragon Dagger troops you're in has been deciphered and monitored by the enemy. Even all the radio equipment at the front line of Weeping Valley has been deciphered and monitored by the machinery faith. As long as we use this network to send a signal, we will be captured by the enemy. This. Li Zijun had thought that a spy had infiltrated the military intelligence department. She had never expected such an answer. Had the technology of the machinery faith developed to the point where they could capture and analyze radio signals? It was terrifying. Then from tomorrow onwards, I'll have the liaison give up on traditional communication devices and use this sound bug to report the situation at the front line. No. Not only did you have to use it, you had to use it frequently to create an illusion that you couldn't hold on for long. Since the enemy thinks that they have our communication system in their grasp, we naturally have to put on a good show and beat them at their own game. My plan is to beat them. When this battle is over, I'll be promoted to the Chief of Staff of the Shandu Army with such an achievement. No one can say no. Li Zijun's arms trembled slightly, and even her breathing became rapid. He had emerged from the war between the Freedom Federation and the Machinery Faith 20 years ago and had been trained by Commander Mun to lead the fox hunting special forces. Throughout his entire military career, Li Zijun had never experienced such a battle before. If Link's plan succeeded, it would be equivalent to crippling the Machinery Faith and the Wasteland Gang. They would be able to kill pigs and cut meat to celebrate the next spring. General, please rest assured. I will definitely follow the plan. If I fail, I will bring my head to see you. Li Zijun was so excited that she even issued a military order. Then I'll leave the Scarlet Dragon Dagger to you for the next few days. How much the enemy can pay for this wave will all depend on your and Ren Yi's performance. Link plucked the sound-transmitting bug, and the little thing crawled out of the snail shell. It wriggled to a flower pot at the side and started munching on the leaves. Link smirked. Without the sound bugs, they could only use the hole to make an issue out of it. It obviously wouldn't work. The sound bug was an encrypted communication mode and a mental link mode. Both methods of communication were extremely reliable. With the technology available on Wasteland Planet version 1.0, there was almost no risk of being cracked. Only in version 2.0, when they came into contact with the alien demonic race and the star system civilization, would their technology improve. When Link raised his head again, he saw the macaw with its wings stuck in its chest. It pouted and frowned at Link. Don't you think you owe me an explanation? Didn't Li Zijun and I make it clear with the sound bugs? Asked Link, stunned. The macaw flapped its wings. I understand all of that. But you want to use the empty fort strategy to lure the main force of the desert cult to attack Weeping Valley, and then send a large number of troops to the front line to pretend to be reinforcements. This is very good. But the key was whether Weeping Valley could defend against the enemy's large-scale firepower. If they were the main force, they definitely wouldn't have sent a few toy cars like last time. When the time comes, long-range firepower, missiles, rocket launchers, and various other things will come in handy. With the firepower of the Divine Tree Noxie and the Air Force units, they can't defend at all. Link kept the macaw in suspense and patted its chubby shoulder. Don't worry, there's always a way out. Lin K smiled as he returned to his bedroom, leaving the dumbfounded macaw behind. Damn, you didn't tell me. However, I don't believe that there won't be any traces left behind. Since I want to improve myself, I'll start by gathering information. The macaw encouraged itself and was prepared to go all out. It looked at the time and saw that it was already 3 in the morning. It immediately yawned. Forget it, I'll do it in the day. The mechanical pioneer once again captured 2 phone calls. After deciphering the contents, the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. He pressed the button to contact the Elder of the Steel Council and said, "Make the arrangements. Stop tomorrow's ambush for half a day. Have the enemy transport supplies to the Scarlet Dragon Dagger." The mechanical pioneers were also playing tricks. If they kept intercepting, the enemy would soon suspect that there was a problem with the communication network. It would be better to temporarily stop for a day and let the other party be careless. This time, the mechanical pioneer's eyes were no longer focused on the Scarlet Dragon Dagger, but on the larger Weeping Valley. He wanted to use the Scarlet Dragon Dagger as bait to draw out the main force of Shandu. Chapter 445 Mobilizing Troops, a Battle of 10,000. Both sides were scheming against each other to ensure the success of their plans. That night, it seemed like Sandu had suffered a few losses. However, only Link, Ren Yi, Li Zijun, and a few other players knew that something big was about to happen. Whether it was a human or a ghost, it was just a matter of whose design was more profound. It could be called the night of the Oscars. The mechanical pioneer, Dr. Zhao, gave the order to withdraw most of the vehicles that were lying in ambush at the front line. Even most of the enemies surrounded by the Scarlet Dragon Daggers also retreated. It was already extremely cold in the winter at the end of the year. At night, the desert temperature could drop to 20 to 30 degrees Celsius. For the Zealot, this temperature required more high-quality low-temperature resistant oil to maintain the operation of the mechanical armor and more energy to maintain the vital signs. It was the same for the mercenaries of the Wasteland Gang. They only came in an armed jeep, but they didn't prepare any materials and facilities to set up camp. The mechanical pioneer's order to go easy made the enemy's attention focus on the Scarlet Dragon Dagger. At the same time, he would let the Scarlet Dragon Drake go and let them continue their work. This way, the mechanical pioneers would have a chance to understand their specific purpose here through a conversation. Because of the macaw's true colors, the pioneers of machinery were completely convinced of the authenticity of the audio conversation and were already planning the next step. The last time Link, John, and a group of Inhumans had snuck into the city was still parked beside the Kiria Canal. Dr. Zhao was a vengeful person. This time, he had to seize the opportunity to take revenge with equal means. The next day, Link was woken up by Sunflower's brainwashing chant. After washing up and walking out of his bedroom, he ran into the curly-haired baboon who was playing marbles with its tail in the corridor. When the curly-haired baboon saw Link, it strode up to him with a wide grin. Boss, do you think this marble is round?" Link took a closer look. The silver luster on the surface was slightly rough, but he could tell that there was no problem with the smoothness. The next second, Link suddenly realized that this was the cobalt ore collected by the cobalt beetles. "Curly hair, where did you get these round marbles?" The curly-haired baboon scratched his head and pointed at the garden. "There are many more beside the garden." Link quickly went to the garden on the first floor. As soon as he reached the living room, he saw the perfectly arranged cobalt and iron balls through the glass. They glowed with a metallic luster under the sun. There were at least 100 of them, all in different sizes. At the same time, a lot of information popped up on Link's system interface. You have completed the main city mission Shandu, Energy Crisis. You have received 300000 experience points and the blueprint of the Sky Eye satellite. Excellent event Energy Revolution has been officially activated. After reading the reward information, Link's mind went blank. The random blueprint had actually rewarded him with a Sky Eye satellite blueprint. The Sky Eye satellite was a type of close Earth communication satellite, and this kind of satellite had a modified mode. In the future, it could be embedded into a spaceship for investigation communication. In the middle and late stages of his previous life, many players had spaceships of various sizes. When they were heading to the planet for a mission, they could release the Sky Eye satellite on the spaceship to perform a preliminary scan and assessment of the planet. It could also be used as a vanguard and to provide communication after landing. The Sky Eye satellite could be considered the most basic communication and reconnaissance satellite in the interstellar universe. It was a necessity for home and travel. Link scratched his head and looked at the satellite blueprint on the table. He couldn't help but mock himself. It's useless even if you give me this now, Ying Luo. Although he had the satellite blueprint, no one in the Freedom Federation had the technology to launch a satellite. At this stage, this thing was completely a dragon-slaying spell to Link. It was only when the alien demonic race descended in version 2.0 and started sending technology to the countryside and one-on-one help activities on the wasteland planet that the science and technology on the planet would make significant progress. With the arrival of the observer team sent by the First Order, the players could use this as a springboard to leave the wasteland planet and enter the universe. Link kept the blueprint of the Sky Eye satellite in his secret room. He couldn't use it now, but he could use it in the future. Link took out a box and put the 105 cobalt balls away. He then called for the macaw to deliver the items to the underground research center. He told it to deliver them to Helen. If nothing went wrong, these cobalt balls and Helen were the key to the excellent mission Energy Revolution. With the forward vision from his previous life, Link could easily identify the key figures. Otherwise, just like in his previous life, Helen would have hidden her identity after escaping from the city of Mechas. Who would have thought that a 15-year-old girl would become the mother goddess of Mechas and be qualified to start an energy revolution? In other words, Helen's return, her research on machinery, and the energy revolution were all led by Link. Link had just sat down when the phone on his desk rang. It was a call from the Military Intelligence Office. General, I've sent out 3 supply teams at the same time today. They approached the Scarlet Dragon dagger from different locations and all of them succeeded. We've only been harassed by a small group of enemies on the periphery, and all the supplies have been sent in. Ren Yi's voice sounded very excited, sweeping away yesterday's gloominess. Link's eyes brightened. Have all the enemies who ambushed us yesterday retreated? They've all retreated. They encountered a small group of enemies near the Scarlet Dragon Ridge, but under Captain Li's leadership, the enemy only harassed them for a while before retreating. The 3 supply teams have successfully arrived at the Scarlet Dragon Drake. The only regret is that they didn't bring too many strategic supplies because they were only experimental. Ren Yi's tone carried a hint of regret. Link was in a good mood. It's possible that the enemy went back during the day to rest and recuperate. They'll only come out at night to ambush us. Ren Yi immediately followed Link's words, then I'll take advantage of the day to arrange for the transportation of supplies to ensure the supply of Red Dragon Dagger at the front line. I'll let them take root at the front line and work hard to explore the mineral resources to guard the strategic location of Red Dragon Dagger. Link thought for a moment and came up with a better idea. No, since the enemy will continue to ambush us tonight, why don't we beat them at their own game and gather the Outlanders in Weeping Valley and the soldiers of Shandu to launch a wave of destructive attacks on the enemy, directly catching all these ambushers in one go? The enemy definitely won't expect us to come out in full force. When all the desert forces lying in ambush are annihilated, we'll take advantage of the enemy's surprise to transport the supplies to the Red Dragon Ridge and build a defense line overnight, getting it done once and for all. Ren Yi's breathing became rapid, and after a long while, he couldn't help but sigh, this is really a big move, but if most of the soldiers rush to the front line, the defense of Weeping Valley will be empty, leaving an opportunity for the enemy to take advantage of. It's fine, we'll just arrange for the Outlanders to defend. Link's tone was relaxed. He was so immersed in his grand plan that he ignored these details. On the other hand, Ren Yi was in a dilemma. However, if it's the Inhumans, it's fine to stop the mobile vehicles. If the enemy uses heavy firepower, the Inhumans won't be able to intervene at all. Link was silent for a moment. Ren Yi, the situation on the battlefield changes rapidly. We only want to seize every opportunity. How can there be a 100% safe situation? If he wanted to win a big victory, he had to bear the corresponding risk. I can understand your obsession with authenticity and security, but there has never been a 100% guarantee in war. What we can do is to seize the opportunity and use the minimum casualties and costs to exchange for the maximum benefits. General, I understand. I'll immediately start organizing the men and prepare. We'll set off tonight. Remember, you must keep this information a secret. I'm still suspecting that there might be a mole among us, Ying Luo, for the 3 ambushes last night. Your subordinate will remember. After Link hung up, he tapped his finger on the table. Everything was in place. He just had to wait for the mechanical pioneers to take action. If he chose to let go of such a great opportunity, then Link would be doubting the computing power of the machinery faith. So far, Link had created 3 key points. First, the Scarlet Dragon Drake was excavating metal mines for war resources. Second, the Sand Capital was going to organize a large-scale counter-ambush tonight, which could be described as a full-force attack, and they would also bring a large number of supplies. Third, Crying Valley's middle gate was empty. Only the Inhumans were providing support for defense, but there was no way to deal with long-range or heavy firepower. Just now, Lin Ke and Ren Yi had displayed their acting skills. After that, Ren Yi and Li Ziqi would act out a double act. This big show could be considered to have begun. Whether the audience would enter the seats or not would depend on the other party. This level of performance was just right anymore, and it would instead cause people to be suspicious. Mechanical City, the Grand Canal of Goria. Ever since the 5 full-time radio capturing devices had been activated, the energy consumption of the city had greatly increased. Everyone in the city was getting less energy every day, and it felt like they were living a hard life. However, the full-time radio had deciphered the military frequency signals of Weeping Valley and the Scarlet Dragon Dagger, copying all the communication content. Right now, in the laboratory of Professor Zhao, the pioneer of machines, in the central forbidden zone of the giant machines, the conversation between Link and Ren Yi was being played. Dr. Zhao analyzed the audio with great interest. The eye sockets and mouth of the skull helmet were overflowing with high-quality energy, which looked like a deformed clown grinning. After 2 days of surveillance and 3 waves of ambushes, the enemy finally lost their formation. Dr. Zhao was confident that victory was in his hands. The enemy's response was entirely based on the fact that they had removed their defenses today. The information he had stolen from the Military Intelligence Department of Shenmue City was very important. Dr. Zhao now knew that the enemy had taken the risk to occupy Red Dragon Ridge in order to mine for cobalt ore. The machinery faith had an extreme thirst for metal resources, not to mention rare resources like cobalt ore. With a phone call today, the mechanical pioneers knew everything he wanted to know. He wanted the underground mine of the Scarlet Dragon Dagger, the supplies transported by the Shandu troops, Weeping Valley, and even the entire Shandu. The data in the mechanical pioneer's brain ran quickly, and the success rate of the plan was deduced. In the end, it obtained an exciting number. Even though the mechanical pioneers knew that there would be risks in this operation, the outcome of success was too tempting, so he had to try. The mechanical pioneer returned to the throne of steel and sat still on it. The purple energy light under the skull helmet was slightly restrained, and he was still like a statue. At the same time, in the base camp of the wasteland gang of Essia, hundreds of miles away. Several warlords had recently deployed their troops near their headquarters, sending a steady stream of troops to the Goria Grand Canal. The arsenal and automobile factories were also running at full capacity in preparation for the general attack next year. In the military tent in the center of the base camp, the skeleton of a machine covered in a silver-gray cloak in the corner suddenly turned. Its eyes revealed a demonic and strange dark red light. Then, the bionic robot got up. After a few seconds of adapting to its staggering steps, it walked to the side of the tent's curtain and said to the outside, "Urgent intelligence. There's an important operation. I'm summoning all the commanders immediately." At the same time, the entire Weeping Valley began to move. All the nodes were like the gears of a precision machine. They operated seamlessly, and each ring affected each other. Because Link had control over the entire military in the Shandu, he only needed to make a phone call to mobilize the troops. Link's every move was eavesdropped by the pioneer of machinery. In addition to the Air Force, the three armies were moving together. This scale could definitely be considered an all-out attack. It was fortunate that the mechanical pioneers knew that they were going to swallow the desert to ambush the troops. Otherwise, they would really be suspected of launching a general attack. Both sides were quietly mobilizing their troops to carry out their own plans. Many Inhumans had also received the recruitment mission from the Military Intelligence Department Ambush Desert Forces. Yesterday, the goods that the players had transported had been eaten 3 times in a row, and rumors had long since spread throughout the city. After receiving the ambush mission today, the players rolled up their sleeves one by one, looking like they were ready to take revenge. Link sat in his office, looking at the map of the huge sand city and desert behind him. The Shandu army had mobilized a total of 5,000 people, including the 300 wolf cavalry that terrified the desert cults. The Military Intelligence Department had recruited 7,000 qualified Inhumans, of which 4,000 were players who rented the wasteland wolves. Such a scale meant that Link was serious. He had invested more than 10,000 troops in the Sand Capital. As for the forces in the Kiria Desert, Link wasn't sure. Over 10,000 resources have been mobilized for this battle. If the machinery faith doesn't respond, it will be awkward. Link crossed his arms and mumbled to himself. Link stood up and walked to the balcony. He looked up at the moonless night sky, which was filled with stars. A moment later, the sound of wings flapping could be heard in the sky. The sand eagle swooped down, flying towards Link. Link was half a step away from the statue, and it crashed into the balcony railing, its feathers falling to the ground. Then, the white saber sea eagle glided gracefully and landed steadily on the railing. It looked down at its stupid husband and could not help but turn away, burying its head under its wings. It was so embarrassed that it could not bear to look at him. Ga. Link's eyes glinted after learning about the Gale Desert's current situation from the Sand Eagle and the White-Bladed Sea Eagle. The main part of this Oscar performance could finally be shown. P.S. Recommending a friend's book Wuji Shang Huang. Author, like Drunk Cold Autumn, brothers who like history can go and take a look. Who said that scholars are useless? Who said that businessmen were profit-seeking? Let's see how a scholar-born merchant's son gets along well, how he defeats one opponent after another, and how he becomes the unprecedented emperor of the Shang dynasty in the boundless world. Chapter 446. The performance begins. Congratulations to Im Suya for becoming the chief of this book. According to the reports of the Sand Eagle and the White-Blade Sea Eagle, the enemies at the Goria Grand Canal were already gathering. In addition to the normal military forces and armed jeeps with high mobility, there were also many long-range weapons for siege purposes. Portable bazookas, grenade-throwing armored vehicles, and even tanks were gathered and on standby next to the Goria Grand Canal, forming a steel torrent battle line. Other than the Zealot, the city had also sent out a few groups of mechanical warriors and even an elder of the Steel Council to lead the battle. It was clear how important this operation was to the mechanical pioneers. From the Sand Eagle and the White-Bladed Sea Eagle, Link learned about the situation in the City of Machines. The enemy was eyeing the city covetously. The Machinery Faith and the Wasteland Gang had sent out many elite troops. It seemed like they were preparing to use this operation as an opportunity to take down the entire Weeping Valley. Link patted the Sand Eagle and the White Blade Sea Eagle on their heads and fed them a piece of camel meat each. Rest for 20 minutes. After that, we will begin the second round of patrol. The Sand Eagle lifted its wings and patted its chest, indicating that it was wrapped up. The broken feathers on its wings fell to the ground like snowflakes. The White Saber Sea Eagle sighed helplessly. Looking at the crazy Sand Eagle, it felt that this mission was like weight-bearing training. Not only did it have to be responsible for scouting, but it also had to be careful not to let the Sand Eagle act up and be discovered by the enemy. Link looked at the time. It was already 9 in the evening. There was no moon in the sky, and it was dotted with stars. It was the darkest time of the month. Link called the military intelligence office and said in a deep voice, "We can send out our troops now. God bless Shadu, we can win this battle." Outside Shenmue City, the Shadu army was waiting in formation. At the forefront of the troops were the 300 wolf cavalry soldiers who had recently become famous in Shandu. However, they had been completely broken up. These 300 wolf riders would lead 4,000 players with wolf mounts to form a mobile vanguard of 4,300 people. In the middle of the team was the army, fox hunting special forces, and special intelligence personnel, who were in rapid combat armored vehicles. At the end of the line were military trucks loaded with goods. The entire army was extremely mobile and good at surprise attacks and counter-encirclement. Following Link's orders, the troops outside the city began to march into the desert. The 4,300 wolf cavalry soldiers were led by the regular army of Shudu and players. They were mighty and full of killing intent. Due to the strong wind and sand in the desert at night and the extremely low temperature, all the players were given cotton-padded jackets by the military intelligence department. They even used headscarves to cover their heads tightly, only revealing a pair of goggles, just like midnight plane drivers. All of the wolf cavalry soldiers did not run wildly, but instead held their breaths and advanced at a normal speed. The thick and soft paws stepped on the desert without making any sound. The middle row kept a certain distance from the rear row of vehicles, turned off the lights, and moved forward with the engine at natural idle state without stepping on the accelerator. The entire army was like a monster in the night, slowly and orderly advancing. In the Scarlet Dragon carriage, Li Zijun stood on a stone spike and looked into the distance. She casually stretched out her hand, and Lang Feng, who was beside her, immediately handed her night vision binoculars. Li Zijun used the night vision telescope to scan the distance. From 700 to 800 meters away, she could see the enemy's camp and the bonfire that swayed and jumped in the cold wind of the desert. Li Zijun couldn't help but sigh, the enemy didn't relax at all. Lang Feng, who was at the side, crawled on a stone spike. Half of his face was wrapped in a face cloth. His originally handsome and resolute face was now bulging and fat. Being specially taken care of by Li Zijun was something that all the players envied. However, to Lang Feng, it wasn't easy to learn anything from Li Zijun. "Captain, why didn't the enemy retreat tonight? Instead, they're still surrounding the Scarlet Dragon dagger. Are they going to do something tonight?" Although Lang Feng's face was swollen and his voice was a little coy, his observation and thinking were still very sharp. Li Zijun handed the night vision binoculars to Lang Feng and let him see the situation in the distance. She looked into the distance and sneered, "These people are just abandoned pawns." Abandoned? Lang Feng's brain quickly thought about the meaning of abandoned and combined with the information about the goods being robbed over the past few days, he suddenly realized, could it be that Sandu will take action tonight? Lang Feng was eager to give it a try. The frequency of intensive battles at the front line was very high. In just 2 days, he had reached level 19, and was only a few thousand experience points away from reaching level 20. Coupled with the sense of urgency from the front line, it made him feel like he was back in the days of performing missions in the special forces. Li Zijun did not hide anything. Although I don't know what the general's plans are, tonight will definitely be the turning point of the battle between the Sand City and the desert forces, she said. With Li Zijun's understanding of Link, such a grand scheme would not be a small one. After observing for a while, Li Zijun stood up and patted the sand off her body. Let's go, since the war hasn't started yet, practice a few rounds with me. Lang Feng's eyes were filled with fear, and he blurted out, still practicing. Li Zijun grinned, revealing 2 rows of big white teeth. To become a qualified special forces soldier, hard work is the most basic. Besides, I can tell from your eyes that you still want to practice, right? Lang Feng was speechless. He wanted to know how Li Zijun could tell that he wanted to practice it in such a dark day. Actually, he didn't want to. He had thought that with Link's recommendation, the road to becoming a special forces soldier would be smooth. However, after interacting with Li Zijun, Lang Feng knew how difficult it was to really become a special forces soldier. From a pugilist to a special forces soldier, Lang Feng received a special trial, the Octagon Cage Trial. Only after undergoing the Octagon Cage Trial with Li Zijun could he learn special forces skills from the other party and obtain related specialties. If it was just one Octagon Cage Trial, it would be fine. But to become a special forces soldier, one must undergo 100 Octagon Cage Trials with Li Zijun before they could be acknowledged by the other party for their successful job change. The key was that with Li Zijun's strength, he could have killed Lang Feng in an instant, but he didn't. He deliberately controlled his strength and adjusted it according to Lang Feng's resistance. Lang Feng's current HP was more than 900, and Li Zijun had to be hit more than 100 times in various ways before the trial ended. Li Zijun used all sorts of methods in the battle, including crashing, tripping, flying, twisting, and stabilizing, dealing a heavy blow to Lang Feng's body and mind. Let's go. Before the battle officially begins, we can still practice a few more rounds. Li Ziqi grinned and lifted Lang Feng by his collar like she was lifting a little chick. Not long after, Lang Feng gritted his teeth and hummed rhythmically in the tent. If he really couldn't help it, he would even shout. The players in the other small tents nearby would show their curious little heads and frown, but their eyes and the corners of their mouths would be full of joy. 98, 99, 100 Dao. In the tent in the middle of the Red Dragon dormitory, 2 special forces soldiers carried Lang Feng out on a stretcher, who was now limp from the battle. Sure enough, the players whispered, I've suffered another 100 dragon collisions this time. I'd like to call it 100 consecutive strikes of the god of death's reflection. F***ck, there's really an inner smell. When the guilds saw this, they couldn't help but shiver. Their envy of Lang Feng turned into joy. Fortunately, they weren't the ones chosen. Although the Scarlet Dragon Dagger was the starting point of this battle, it was not the main battlefield tonight. Beneath the city of machinery, at the Grand Canal in Goryeo, the Desert Alliance army formed by the Machinery Faith and the Wasteland Gang was like a flood of steel. This time, their destination was the Weeping Valley. They took advantage of the time difference when all the troops of Shandu were attacking the Red Dragon Dagger and broke through the southern gate of Shandu. The Elder of the Iron Council was fully equipped in his mech and operating the holographic screen in front of him. From now on, he was the commander of the Desert Coalition Army that attacked Weeping Valley, representing the joint will of the Mechanical Pioneers and the Wasteland Gang commanders. The joint force consisted of the Zealots of the Machinery Faith, the Mechanical Warriors, and the mercenaries of the Wasteland Gang. Both sides had made a lot of preparations for this surprise attack. In addition to the low-level mercenaries, the Wasteland Gang also sent the powerful mid-level mercenaries and the high-level mercenaries who were good at superpowers. The Machinery Faith had also brought out many high-tech war machines, just to secure victory. With the operation of the Iron Council Elder, the resonators located all over the torrent of steel troops began to work, and the mobile troops turned off their lights. They relied on the navigation of the signal tower in the mechanical city to move quickly without any noise. The resonators located all over the army produced energy waves that were in the opposite direction of the moving army to offset the noise. At the same time, the signal vehicles of the army also sent out interference and shielding signals, so that the signal detectors of the Shandu military could not detect nearby signals, to ensure that the long-range attack would be smooth and not be discovered by the enemy. The troops from both sides were advancing towards the target location in an almost silent manner, like top hunters in the night, hiding in ambush before launching a fatal blow. However, the Desert Alliance Army's actions did not escape Link's eyes. They would never have thought that there would be two pairs of sharp eyes staring at them in the dark, sending back their every move to the Weeping Valley. Under the lead of the Wolf Cavalry, the Shandu troops quickly entered the depths of the Gale Desert. The scouts at the front gave feedback to the troops at the back immediately. "Commander, we've found traces of enemies 5 kilometers ahead. A rough observation shows that there are only 500 to 600 enemies set up camp. Their goal seems to be to besiege the Red Dragon Dagger's allies." Benjamin's brows were tightly furrowed, and his expression was one of disbelief. He mumbled, 500 to 600 people, why are there only so few people? This was the first time that Benjamin was leading an army of 10,000 men as a commander to battle in the front line. He thought that it would be a huge battle, but in the end, 10,000 men only encountered 500 to 600 of the other side. The strength of both sides was not on the same level at all, so he lost all interest in it. "Continue to investigate and report. Don't let go of anything within a few kilometers, see if there are any other ambushes." However, when the soldiers from the reconnaissance battalion reported again with a definite answer, Benjamin thought for a moment and finally gave the order to attack. For a camp of 500 to 600 people, not to mention an army of 10,000, even if there were 4,000 Wolf cavalry soldiers, it would not be enough. When the players found out that there were only 300 to 500 enemies, their killing intent was so strong that their eyes were about to burst. When they saw someone taking their heads, they felt as if they had an irreconcilable hatred and wanted to eat their flesh. They came out in the cold wind at night, thinking of fighting a big battle to gain more experience. In the end, more than 10,000 people were fighting for 500 to 600 people's experience. The competition was as fierce as the national examination. The players who did not get any monsters were full of complaints and drank the northwest wind for the whole night. Even the work of cleaning up the battlefield was not delayed for a few minutes. Wherever the players passed, not a single blade of grass grew. Everything that could be taken was taken away, not even a tent was spared. Benjamin looked at the vast desert in the night sky and was speechless. This was his first battle, a battle of 10,000 people. The total time was less than 3 minutes. Wasn't it a little too casual to end it so hastily? Sighing softly, he tapped the sound transmission bug in his ear. "Connect me to Howling Heights." In the Wind Howl Castle, which was more than 10 kilometers away. The two feelers of the sound bug on Link's office table suddenly hardened, thickened, grew longer, and trembled. "There's a message for you." Link stuffed the sound bug into his ear and answered the call. "General, there are only 500 to 600 enemies in the ambush. We have cleared them all. Please give us further instructions." Link was about to speak when he suddenly felt the ground shake. The water in the cup rippled from the vibrations. The macaw rushed to Link's office immediately and pushed the door open in panic. E equals plus. Earthquake, why are you still sitting here and making a phone call? Run. Link sat firmly on the boss's chair and refused to leave no matter how hard the macaw tried to drag him away. He was on the other side of the room, assigning work to Benjamin. "Next, send the convoy in charge of the transportation of supplies to the Red Dragon carriage. The rest of the Shittas soldiers and the Inhumans Wolf Riders, cancel stealth mode and rush back to the Weeping Valley as fast as possible to charge at the enemies in the Weeping Valley." After Link's announcement, Benjamin's brain buzzed in the desert, and countless questions appeared in his mind. Where did the enemy come from? In an instant, Benjamin figured out the truth. The 500 to 600 enemies here were just bait. Their real target was Weeping Valley, which was empty and had weak defenses. Damn it, we've all been deceived. Benjamin clenched his fist and used the sound bug to say his last words, "General, hold on. We'll return immediately." Pulling the reins to control the wild wolf to change direction, Benjamin was burning with anxiety and loudly ordered, "All wolf riders and infantry units, take note. Immediately return to the Weeping Valley to fight the enemy and protect the general." The mission of the 4,000 players changed from ambush to rescue, and the mission level also jumped to a B-rank mission. After ending the call with Benjamin, Link tapped on the sound bug in his ear and connected to the Underground Research Center. "The audience is here. The performance is starting." Link stood up and hugged the dumbfounded macaw. He smiled and said, "Let's go, I'll treat you to the balcony to watch the free fireworks." Monster Synthesis Master Chapter 447. Chapter 449 The Whale Swallowing Allied Forces. The defensive force field is initially revealed, add 5253. The macaw looked dumbfounded. "Fireworks? What kind of fireworks? We watched fireworks after an earthquake? Later, if we too can't escape and are crushed to death, then the whole city is watching the fireworks we cremated." Just as he walked to the balcony, the macaw's mouth suddenly stopped, the boss with his mouth open staring dumbly at the dazzling white light in the distance, lighting up the entire sky. "I'm a boy, what the is this?" Through the white light, the macaw saw countless vehicles, tanks, and personnel, arranged in a target, as if the gods descended from the sky, suddenly appeared outside the Weeping Valley. Link looked at the torrent of steel that lined up outside the Weeping Valley, armed with jeeps, armored vehicles, tanks, and the phalanx of Wasteland Gang mercenaries and mechanical fanatics. There are quite a few, and the types are also very rich. His plans were not wasted. With a force of this size, as long as a wave of swallows eats all of them, the mechanical god cult and the Wasteland Gang will be equivalent to half of their bodies in the soil. Link pointed to the steel frenzy under the Weeping Valley and spread her arms. "How about, imagine this torrent of steel is attacking the Weeping Valley at the same time. Does the flames of various cannonballs look like a grand fireworks show?" The macaw's jaw seemed to be dislocated, with its mouth wide open and looking at Link dully. It suspected that Link was frightened. The enemy had all hit the door of his house, and he was still thinking about watching the fireworks. Why didn't he go to the grave directly as a mechanical god, and set fire to the tree later to burn paper? The macaw returned to his senses and solemnly said to Link, "It's still too late to walk. There is no shelter in front of the Weeping Valley in Ma Ping Chuan. It will not be a matter of a few shells coming over later." Link is extremely confident, standing in place with his hands behind his back. "It's better not just a few shells, otherwise it will completely lose the meaning of testing intensity. Don't worry, everything is in my plan." The macaw was skeptical, and left the office in a swift smoke. After a while, he appeared on the balcony again. With an extra suitcase in his hand, it seemed that he was ready to run softly at any time. In Shenmue City, players and merchants saw the white sky reflected, and they all ran to a high place. Standing on the side, they saw the army assembled in the Gobi. Thousands of steel torrents made up of enthusiasts and mercenaries, tank formations, and anti-aircraft artillery formations are clearly visible. There are a large number of mortars, and some players even saw specially modified large trucks that were completely transformed into a small launch pad, and on the launch pad are small missiles standing upright like bamboo. Everyone's faces were pale, and they didn't know how an enemy of this scale quietly appeared in front of them. When so many tanks came, there was no sound at all, which is too scary. What makes everyone more alarming is that all the muzzles of the iron torrent have been aimed at the core of the Weeping Valley Howling Castle. This is not only the heart of the Weeping Valley, but also the lifeblood of the entire Sand Capital. Shadow's army has all gone out tonight, and even the players of the Wolf Cavalry have almost dispatched to perform the task, crying Valley defense is weak. The enemy is equally eager to move out, and it is like a from heaven who appears in front of you. Once the Weeping Valley falls, the sand duo behind will also be reduced to war. It's going to be over, this time is going to be over, with so many enemies, Link must be bombarded into scum. Faced with this level of steel torrents, even sending pets is of no avail. Before the pets are launched, the enemy's shells will be the first to strike. Don't do it, I made a special trip to Shadow to join Link for the mission. What do you mean by coming here yesterday? I just want to ask, if Link hangs up, won't the Steppenwolf loan have to be repaid? At this moment, the players looked at the horror machine facing the Howling Castle, feeling at a loss. Go up and help? The opposing array is stern, with more than 10,000 people and plenty of firepower. Don't go up, watch Link die for nothing? In addition, this scene is too sudden right now. Elite players and Shadow's soldiers are all out to the desert. Players have no mission or even form an effective and consistent goal. The merchants in Shenmue City who saw this scene frantically wanted to call to inform the family in Shadow City, but when they picked up the phone, they found that all the communication lines were invalid, and even one phone call could not be made. The atmosphere suddenly became anxious. The pale light illuminates half of the sky, and the druids of the sacred tree Nashi focus on the distant Gobi. The 5 elders who were postponed to sit in the town saw the mechanical legion with a pale face, and a natural mark on their chests with their hands. They passed their will to all druids through the sacred tree. The Moon Shadow sect vowed to coexist and die with the tree Nash. The ancient guardian looked into the distance, his deep eyes pierced the dazzling light, and saw the steel torrent behind him. His brows became dignified, and his voice slowly said, "These cold guys are enemies of nature." Speaking, grabbing the huge rock next to him with both hands, arching his body to accumulate strength. The rock nearly 2 meters in diameter was thrown out, and the track was very clear under the searchlight of the mechanical army. When the rock flew to the highest point, in the launch vehicle of the mechanical legion, a small missile dragged its arrogant tail like a comet. In the next second, a bright firework burst out in the sky, and the rock was blown into dust, slowly drifting away in the sky. The elder of the Iron Council who sits in the army sneered, "The backward and ignorant attack method is destined to be replaced by machinery." They were not intercepted by the enemy until they reached the Weeping Valley. The mechanical elder also deliberately removed all camouflage and restrictions in a place 2 kilometers away from the Weeping Valley, and appeared blatantly. Until now, Shadow has not arranged any troops for defense. Of course, if the stone thrown by the treant just now can be counted as defense. The machinery does not die, long live the head of state. Sure enough, the pioneers are omnipotent, and with 500 or 600 people, Shadow's combat power is drawn out. This mechanical elder had personally seen Link and John's destructive power, and it would have been a lot of dreams. Without any bells and whistles, he raised his hand and directly ordered the legion, "Fire!" The barrel of the tank was gradually raised, aiming at the Howling Castle at the top of the Weeping Valley. The mortars and howitzers also started their numerical adjustments, targeting the Howling Castle. There is only one place for all long-range firepower, and that is the Howling Castle. In the eyes of the mechanical elder, no Link was threatened by the total strength of the entire Shadow. Destroying Link, Weeping Valley, and Shadow, to him is just to get something. The mechanical elder's pure alloy arm cut high from the air. In the next second, the long-range firepower behind, or the light swaying like a dragon, or the sky-shaking noise blasted from the gun barrel, forming a curtain of firepower in the night sky, all rushing towards the castle. The corners of the mechanical elder's mouth were raised, and under the intense firepower of this frenzied bombardment, even if it was stronger than John the number 1 killer, it would be difficult for him to retreat, let alone Link. All those who attempt to use the flesh as the enemy of the mechanic cult will be the man's arm as a car and be ruthlessly crushed by the machinery. Even Link, who once embarrassed the mechanic cult, is no exception. This time, the mechanical legion came for revenge. On the balcony of the Howling Castle, the macaw looked pale at the overwhelming bolide. Fuck, can we not pretend to be live? Hurry up, if you don't leave, you should eat your table tomorrow. The macaw stepped forward and grabbed Link's leg, only to find that his wings could not twist his thigh at all. The cannonballs and stray bullets are like gusts of wind and showers, intertwined, all converging in the front direction. The dense light spots concealed the light of the stars in the sky, and the entire howling castle seemed to collide with the stars. Link clicked on the soundworm in the cochlea and said lightly, "Okay, it's time to show our secret weapon." Macaw, hey? We still have secret weapons? The entire space of the Weeping Valley suddenly heard a shock of rapid cutting of the air, and then a blue curtain appeared in front of everyone, covering the howling castle, the god tree and the godwood city, forming a 270 degrees of the hemisphere. Boom boom boom. All the artillery fire fell on the blue curtain, bursting out with dazzling explosive light. Link put on a pair of sunglasses and opened his arms. Welcome to witness Shadow's latest technology, a large defensive field. The artillery fire kept falling on the energy shield of the large defensive position, and accompanied by thunderous explosions, ripples on the energy shield. The macaw on the side stared blankly, watching the shells hit the shield, and his body trembled. For fear that even one of the shells could not be held, he would directly pierce the shield. After a while, he said, "Wow, this thing. When did you do it?" "For a while, I haven't shown it before because of lack of energy. That's why I went to the death quagmire and developed the red dragon's back." The macaw suddenly realized, it turns out that cat's crystal and cobalt iron ore are used to provide energy for the defense field. The azure blue shield, accompanied by the flames soaring outside the shield, made Link's back so tall. The macaw couldn't help but open the chatterbox. Then how long can this shield block the attack? With the current stock of cat's crystal and cobalt iron ore, day and night. The macaw exhaled a turbid breath, and the panicked and tight body relaxed and softened, visible to the naked eye. The little black suitcase was spinning in place. After a while, the macaw in sportswear changed into a nightgown, put on a nightcap, and a soft pillow was clamped under the wings, and yawned, "Then I will go back to sleep." The staff of the Underground Research Center saw the power of the large defensive field through the external screen. The enemy's firepower was continuous like a rainstorm. Tank shells, howitzers, and all kinds of flares were scattered on the protective stand. Apart from the ripples, even a crack was not seen. It's like a lofty mountain, motionless. At this moment, through the defensive force field, everyone saw a missile-emitting plume rising straight from the enemy camp, flying high and falling towards the defensive force field in an arc. Guru! The members of the Underground Research Center all swallowed their saliva, and real-time observation data flicked across the other side of the big screen. Dr. Ludwig's expression is serious. The shock and deterrent subsonic surface-to-surface missile, 4.2 meters in length, 0.5 meters in diameter, 300 kilograms of high explosive warhead, overall structural weight of 800 kilograms, inertial guidance and image guidance. The explosion can produce equivalent 500 kilograms of TNT equivalent energy. Everyone in the research center held their breath and waited for the effect of this shocking subsonic ground-to-surface missile hitting the large defensive field. Boom! With an explosion, the entire Weeping Valley burst into the sky like daylight. The energy shield of the large defensive force field set off ripples visible to the naked eye, slowly spreading around, like a pool of water. Except for the ripples, the defensive force field energy field has no effect. Defend! Dr. Ludwig exclaimed excitedly, clenched fists. Even the deterrent-class subsonic missile can be defensible. It can be seen that the strength of this defensive field is sufficient to ensure the safety of the Weeping Valley. 270 degrees of defense, only the position behind the Weeping Valley has a dead corner vacancy. Unless the missiles of the mechanical god cult will turn, it will never hurt the Weeping Valley a single cent. At most it will hit the deserted Gobi behind the valley. On. Helen then inspected the giant tokamak ring that powers the large defensive field. The enemy's mercury-like attack just now reduced the energy source by 5%. It is no exaggeration to say that with the current inventory of Cat's crystal and cobalt iron ore, they can defend against such an attack all day. Inside Shenmue City, the Shadow natives and the players exclaimed again and again. When the shocking subsonic missile exploded just now, Shenmue City all exclaimed and set off a sound wave. Did we not build the Weeping Valley by ourselves? When did we have such a thing? Large defensive force field, this thing is too strong, is it impossible to penetrate this dense firepower? I'm crying, the Steppenwolf loan next month won't run away. The mood of the players has changed from worrying and complicated to now, one by one, they are relieved, and they start all kinds of jokes, as if the attacking outside is not the vicious mechanical army, but the ignorant children next door. And the most shocking at this moment is of course not the Shadow people in the defensive field, but the members of the Mechanical Legion who are staring at the cold and violent wind to attack the Weeping Valley. All kinds of powerful firepower hit the energy field, as if a mud cow entered the sea, except for the energy ripples on the surface, there was no sign of penetration. Elder, what shall we do now? Just now I received a signal that the enemy's large army in the desert has completely wiped out the decoy and is now rushing back. Hearing this, the elder machine felt a little more solemn between his eyebrows. He never expected that Crying Valley had a large defensive force field. Although this thing is a mechanical city, but the energy consumption is terrible, and the mechanical city will not be opened easily. The elder mechanic almost gritted his teeth and said word by word, "Continue to attack, all firepower will be recalibrated, aiming at one point of the bombardment." The large defensive force field is extremely energy consuming, even the defensive force field of Mechanic City cannot last for a few minutes. Can there be more energy than us? After finishing speaking, the mechanical elder paused for a moment. Next order www.mtlnovel.com. The front row changes to the back row. All armed jeeps and Legion members will go to the back for defense. With the two orders, the Mechanical Legion changed rapidly, and the firepower of the bombardment became more intense. At the same time, the Wolf Cavalry led by Benjamin, who was attacking at high speed in the desert, had seen the energy field covering the Weeping Valley a few kilometers away, and the dense firepower of the mechanical army focused on a little bombardment. Achieving meritorious service, right now, rush. P.S. Ask for a recommendation ticket, ask for a monthly pass. Monster Synthesis Master Chapter 448. The mechanical core is of good quality and quickly adjusted its formation under the orders of the elders of the Iron Council. Although the mechanical elder firmly believed that Shadow's large defensive field could not last long, the enemy force behind him should not be underestimated. Both the Wolf Cavalry and the Shadow troops are strong enemies. The mechanical elder puts the most ruthless words and does the safest thing. Everything is the best answer given by mechanical calculations. The night sky was reflected in red by various explosions and fires, and all the attacks converged at one point. As the project director of the large defensive force field, Dave was operating on the system at this moment. The originally evenly distributed energy field had undergone some changes at this moment. A strong energy field gathers at the place where the enemy fires. Thicker, more absorbed, not afraid of overflow. Continue the bombardment. All the attack methods with sufficient range will hit me. The mechanical elder gradually rose from the steel throne wearing magnetic armor. The frontline commander appointed by the mechanical pioneers, Elder Sally, is good at combat modification, a magnetic armor plus a rechargeable steel throne, definitely one of the few mechanical elders who can touch the high-end combat power of Dr. Zhao's realm. Sending him out this time also has the ambition to win the Weeping Valley. Elder Sally raised his arms, and the blue energy spilled from the Iron Throne was converted into electrical energy. The dense electric arc was like a snake, wrapped around the magnetic armor. Elder Sally's mechanical hands folded and contracted, turning into two black magnetic cannon barrels, and both arms were wound with amplified magnetic coils. The energy of the Iron Throne was directed into the magnetic armor, and it circulated quickly along the ducts at the gaps of the armor. The blue electric light snake entangled the magnetic coil, simply and rudely turning on the magnetic boost. Elder Sally's magnetic cannon barrel aimed at the bombardment energy field, his eyes locked and began to charge. The energy of the Iron Throne poured into the magnetic armor, and Elder Sally became a weapon medium, a cannon on Earth. The air was gradually anxious, and accompanied by the crackling sound of electric energy, Elder Sally felt like he was in control of the world. Laugh! 2 streamers shot out from the barrel, and the violent beam of electric energy hit the energy field forcibly. Looking from a distance, the Weeping Valley under the protection of the huge shield and Elder Sally are connected by a bucket-thick electric whip, and half of the Gobi is shining with blue electric light. The entire Weeping Valley under the protection of the defensive force field, the air vibrated and buzzed, and the people in the Howling Castle, the Divine Tree, and the Divine Wood City felt the air wave like waves. The energy field also dissipated in waves of ripples. Under the bombardment of the electromagnetic cluster, where the energy was heavy before, the energy level actually began to fade and gradually become thinner. The underground research center, the entire laboratory has entered an alarm state. Warning: the core energy of the energy ring has dropped sharply. The current energy is 85%, 80%, 70%, 60%. Helen looked at the rapidly declining energy source value, and hurriedly reloaded to activate the secondary energy. The 2 energy sources work together, and the rate of decline has finally slowed down. Dr. Ludwig had already opened his mouth wide in surprise. The steel throne was added with magnetic armor, and the lasing energy bombarded the defensive field. The effect was comparable to the equivalent of a 5-ton TNT explosion. If this energy intensity is directly hit, it will whiz. The castle will be directly reduced to ruins. Dave, the master of the 3-line mechanics, was also shocked. As a person who had personally participated in the battle in the mechanical city, Dave saw at a glance that the turbulent blue energy was definitely an elder of the Iron Council. The Iron Throne itself is equivalent to a tokamak device with a lot of energy accumulated inside. The magnetic armor amplifies this energy, causing it to cause more terrible damage. This guy is a difficult opponent. Dave, the scavenger mecha of Sally and the magnetic armor of Elder Sally are not at the same level. In addition, this elder is good at electromagnetic control. If it really fights, regular electronic equipment will be affected. On the contrary, Helen on the side was lost in thought, looking at the magnetic armor and the steel throne in the picture after overloading the secondary energy. If she remembers correctly, the spy mouse has uploaded all the copied content to the data center, which seems to contain experimental data and parameters related to magnetic armor and electromagnetic. The gunfire in the Gobi blasted the sky, but in the Weeping Valley separated by the defensive field, the most heard sound was the buzzing of the shield against the electromagnetic cluster, accompanied by crackling noise from time to time. And when countless firepower poured out in the energy field, the land of the Gobi began to tremble, and the night behind the Mechanical Legion also sounded a roar, wrapped in a strong murderous intent from the darkness, like an unknown ancient giant. The mechanical fanatics and mercenaries standing in the Gobi can clearly feel the shock of the energy contained in the earth, roaring like thunder, and the air trembling with friction. Although invisible, everyone guessed the origin of this great ancient beast. The wolf cavalry who made the whole gods and the wasteland gang heard the wind came against the wind. All zealots, mercenaries, get weapons and line up to meet the enemy. Elder Sally's brain is running fast, connecting a mechanical warrior through the communication network to give orders to the Legion. The rear battle formation was adjusted, forming a half-moon formation in a very fast time, blocking the wolf cavalry's charge with the largest area of shooting. The rapid breathing of the mechanical fanatics and mercenaries betrayed their true fears. Running is like drumming, and every beat hits the heart, making people frightened. The headlights of all armed jeeps suddenly turned on, and the lights that lit up formed a light curtain, pushing horizontally toward the desert, making the wolf cavalry rushing in the dark invisible. Why haven't these Steppenwolves been disturbed in any way? The members of the Mechanical Legion in front were panicked. In their imagination, Steppenwolf saw the dazzling light, and the images of running around uncontrollably, collapsing, and trampling did not appear. On the contrary, these wolf cavalry were even more energetic after seeing the light, and seemed crazy. Facing the light and launched a charge. Although the mechanical legion didn't move at all, there was an emotion called fear in his heart, which quickly bred as the wolf cavalry charged by the vast number of invisible wolf cavalry. Don't panic, stick to your position. The enemy will never break through our firepower net. The mechanical warrior walked back and forth in the queue, issuing instructions in the loudest voice. The enemy's counterattack is in the Führer's expectation. At this moment, the mechanic city is pulling from the Goria Grand Canal to counter-encircle the enemy. Today, wipe out the enemy and take down the Weeping Valley. Tomorrow, we will advance into Sandy. At that time, everything in Sandy. It will all be ours. The mechanical warriors controlled by Elder Sally were full of voices, and their speeches were extremely provocative. With a few words, these fanatics and mercenaries had fallen into fantasy. Desire breeds a strong sense of purpose and belief, and dispels the fear in the heart. Greed and desire flashed in everyone's eyes. Fanatics are eager for the rich resources of Shadu to make them go further in the way of machinery. The mercenaries who licked their blood were full of drunkenness, life and death, wine, tickets and money. Coupled with hearing that the mechanic city is moving towards the front, the zealots and mercenaries have nothing to fear. Even the mechanical city has been dispatched, and they will win this battle. Look at the wolf cavalry. Benjamin, who is at the forefront, has a shiny silver alloy armor and a tiger head helmet. It's hard to imagine that the second generation of Chuan, who was originally weak and uncontrollable, could actually charge on the battlefield. The wasteland wolf under Benjamin's crotch is also full of silver armor. One person and one wolf are like gods descending to the earth, full of brilliance. There are two dark-colored septa in the eye sockets of the wasteland wolf helmet, which are used to block sand and dazzling sunlight. They were temporarily equipped before the operation tonight. For night battles, especially for assault units such as wolf cavalry, the deterrence formed by the charge is strong enough to penetrate the entire mechanical army. The disadvantage is that the enemy can discover and prepare in advance. For this reason, Link has prepared anti-dazzling lenses early to prevent this hand-light attack. Benjamin pulled out a light machine gun from behind, and the bullets went from the body of Steppenwolf to the ammunition box on the side of it. At the same time, two portable assault rifles were hung on the armor of Steppenwolf's thick hind legs, with ammunition attached to the munition box on the other side. Click! As the light machine gun pulled the safety bolt, Benjamin got closer and closer to the mechanical legion. Benjamin was holding a light machine gun, charging forward alone, facing the mechanical army that was waiting like a torrent of steel, blood spurting, no timidity, and 1,000 words in his chest converged into a roar. For Shadu. The players behind him had bloodshot eye sockets, and his eyes were torn apart. They were excited to see so much experience. Coupled with the roar of the pioneers of Benjamin, they were all touched by the situation and took out their weapons. Shouted and launched the final charge. More than 4,000 wolf cavalry ran wildly in the gobi, and the rolled-up dust covered the sky, like a live sandstorm. Under the double blue light of electromagnetic clustering and large defensive force field, it is like nebula dust in the universe, with an indescribable depth and terror mixed in the magnificence. Da-da-da! The light machine gun spit out the fire dragon, and Benjamin took the lead to clear the way for the wolf cavalry behind him. Link, who was far away in the Howling Castle, saw this scene with a slight reminiscence in his eyes. The thin young man who used to follow him with a brother Lin, has now grown into the deputy commander of the Special Operations Battalion, the secretary of the Shadow Commander, and the captain of the Wolf Cavalry, leading the charge to the front line, swearing fearlessly. Link has a lot of emotions, and the players are fighting hard for their lives. He can understand that these sand soldiers charge forward one by one regardless of their lives, which shocked him a lot. As the supreme commander of Shadu, how can you watch these people die on the way to the charge? Then let me help you. As soon as the voice fell, the mechanical corps at the forefront, armed with guns and waiting for the wolf cavalry to enter the range, suddenly felt that their feet were soft, and immediately the whole person fell into a pit. A bulge on the gobi ground continued to wreak havoc on the front line. Where the front feet were just bulging, the gobi soil on the back feet was soft and sinking deep together with the people and the soil. Behind many armed jeeps, the front of the car fell into a pit. Under the light of the car lights, the mechanical legion vaguely saw the shadow of the huge arthropod tentacles hidden under the soil. The mechanical legion's position was chaotic because of the sinking of the ground, and the dense firepower net that was originally prepared to go was all muted for a while. On the contrary, Benjamin's firepower was enough to cover the front line of the mechanical army. The flames swayed in the dark, like a pearl, with the 2 assault rifles on the wasteland wolf. The firepower of one person is comparable to an armed jeep, and it even cut a hole in the mechanical army. The wolf cavalry behind Benjamin were also in range, with assault rifles and sniper rifles in their hands. The flames in the darkness gradually increased, and they suppressed the mechanical army for a while. Elder Sally is still working hard to bombard the energy shield, but from the perspective of the mechanical warrior, he has already seen the failure of the back row. At this moment, he has to keep issuing orders. The back row members go to the front, fire at speed to stop the enemy. If true let the cavalry charge to the face, then this battle will undoubtedly be defeated. The mechanical legion is in a passive situation before and after. The energy shield in front of it is solid. I don't know how long it will take to break the energy shield of the large defensive force field. The wolf cavalry behind is imminent, and the firepower net is several seconds slower than the reservation. At this time, it is difficult to fight in a hurry. Rely on the firepower net to limit the wolf cavalry to a safe distance. Although in the plan of the mechanical pioneers Dr. Zhao and Elder Sally, once the mechanical legion encounters the main force of Shadow's attack, immediately apply for machine support, and the mechanical city will start from the rear to round up the main force of Shadow. A perfect plan, forehand to break through the Weeping Valley, backhand to wipe out the main force of Sand City, and the mechanical god cult will not lose. It just made him never expect that a large defensive force field was installed in the Weeping Valley. This is the unique technology of Machine City. How did you get sand? Numerous doubts were in Elder Sally's mind, and data calculations could no longer provide him with answers. Link put down the red wine glass in his hand, took off his sunglasses, and glanced at the eager pets in the garden. It's been a long time, go. Link tapped the cochlear soundworm and connected to the underground research center. Dave, give me a 3-meter diameter hole below the Weeping Valley. It's time to fight back. Dave quickly manipulated the device with both hands, and soon a whole www.mtlnovel.com boss, get it done appeared in the energy field outside the Crying Valley with a diameter of about 3 meters. The cute pets in the Howling Castle are all harms after being released. The treasure hunter stood on a high rock in the Weeping Valley and activated the rat group knot. All the wild mice within a 5-kilometer radius of the Weeping Valley came out of their nests, crushed by the black tide, like a black tide, sweeping out of the gap in the energy field. Others such as King Kong, Obsidian Pioneer, Hydraulic Press Hippo, Gargoyle, etc., also poured out. In it, a dark shadow flashed by. Standing in the sacred tree Nosh, the 5 elders who were observing the battle happened to catch this familiar shadow, and then turned to the druid of the Lunar Shadow Council who had assembled. It is incumbent to eradicate the cult, and everyone will follow me. The players far away in Shenmue City also discovered the void under the Weeping Valley. The players who responded immediately raised their weapons and rushed to the front line at the fastest speed. No matter how late I go, I can't even drink the broth. The Kuroshio, composed of rats, like a huge black curtain, rushed to the front row long-range bombardment troops of the Mechanical Legion at the fastest speed. Elder Sally was itchy when he saw this. Although these little things were not very lethal, the number was astonishing, and they even became a group of terrifying effects of Kuroshio. He gritted his teeth and gave up the bombardment of the energy field. The energy cannons in both hands quickly changed and turned into a fork. The energy from the Iron Throne was re-injected, like a fork-shaped lightning like a snake and electric spider. Dimension Reduction Strikes. Monster Synthesis Master Chapter 449. Many mice were struck by fork-shaped lightning, and the strong electric current crackled, and the hit mice were scorched and smoked. The fork lightning has a very wide range, directly covering almost half of the front of the mechanical legion. Standing on a rock, the treasure rat looked at the people who were crying in the valley, frowned and furious. The treasure hunter commanded the rat tide to disperse and rushed into the enemy's formation into pieces, while twittering to arrange sabotage tasks for the agent rat team. Then the treasure hunter saw the rubber python winding out of the hollow at a glance, and shouted immediately. Indicated to bring some goods before entering the enemy line. The rubber python opened its mouth in the blood basin, and the pink and battered mice slid into the stomach of the rubber shot in an orderly manner, and the rubber shot was full in a few seconds. In the end, the treasure hunter and the 5-mouse agent team also squeezed in. Squeak! The treasure hunter raised his small paw and signaled to move forward. The rubber python was a little braced, burped, twisted its fat body, and slid directly against the fork-shaped lightning. The whole body of the rubber python is made of insulating rubber. No matter if you are a fork lightning or something, you are not afraid to change it. But this group of pets were so stunned by Link's ears that they would never show their cards easily. Although he is not afraid of fork lightning, he still pretends to move and dodge, creating the illusion that he is extremely afraid. The Kuroshio is broken into zeros and the gap becomes larger. This makes Elder Sally's fork lightning extremely inefficient. Most of the energy released is empty, and can only hit a small number of mice. It continues to maintain except for wasting the energy of the Iron Throne. Doesn't make any difference. At the same time, Elder Sally discovered that the enemy forces in the cavity were constantly pouring out, and he simply attacked the cavity directly. A fork-like flash with one hand is like an electric spider. The current spreads to the cavity, but when the current is about to seal the cavity, the energy field changes again. The original cavity is instantly closed, and all the crackling current falls on the protective force field. The player who was stuck at the door turned pale and frightened at first. After recovering, he immediately made a grimace at Elder Sally and mocked him. The other manipulator of Elder Sally's magnetic armor changed again, turning into a honeycomb-shaped shooting window, densely packed with dozens of miniature muzzles. Accompanied by a burst of energy surging, 30 or 40 rounds of energy were fired from the muzzle, which burst immediately after touching an object or the ground, causing small-scale explosion damage. Elder Sally is like a weapon dealer, constantly changing his weapon types in different combat environments. But soon, he noticed that a rubber python was approaching the remote unit at an extremely fast speed, and while advancing to dodge, he looked back from time to time and spit out a white mouse from his mouth. The white mouse would explode when it fell on the remote unit, causing damage to the formation. The rubber python vomited all the way, and the exploding mouse was vomited from its mouth like a grenade, falling into the pile of people and equipment and causing an explosion. When Elder Sally saw this, he immediately fired with the blaster gun, and the scattered energy cluster resembled a sky full of stars, and like regular fireflies, falling around the rubber python. The rubber python immediately turned on snakeskin walking position, evading and moving speed increased by 50%, and the bloated body suddenly became extremely flexible. All kinds of difficult movements were easily handled, and it seemed easy to think of an adjective flexible fat man. The blasting bomb sprinkled water like a sloshing down, blasting a basin-sized hole in the ground. The rubber python walked with an S in a while, an AB in a while, avoiding all the explosive bombs. In the end, N, M, S, and L slid out on the ground, rushing into the long-range force of the mechanical legion, and a brain vomited out all the mice, including the treasure hunter, the 5-mouse agent team, and the self-detonation mouse. In the next second, the self-explosive mouse scattered and fled, climbed up the tank under the command of the treasure hunter, and got into the tank's tracks and the thick black barrel. Blast the track to make the tank immobile, or get into the barrel and wait for the tank to fire, and the barrel will burst. There was also an explosion that sneaked into the ammunition compartment inside the tank without knowing it. The flames skyrocketed and a small mushroom cloud was set off. Rats like the Kuroshio are also broken into pieces, entering the army, or biting fanatics, mercenaries, or using their pair of front teeth to damage various equipment. The long-range attack of the mechanic army's heavy rain, the firepower gradually declined, and the courage ceased. As the firepower weakened, the actions of other beasts became more unscrupulous. Directly cut the obsidian pioneer in the back row, like a road tyrant, overturning the car wherever it passed. 2 large pliers cut the mercenary into 2 at random. The bullet fell on the obsidian scorpion armor, only the flames did not hurt. The 4 gargoyles swooped down and landed in the most crowded place. Terror scream, war wind, crowd taunt, like a big killer for range damage. Ordinary fanatics and mercenaries, where can they bear it? With this kind of injury, it is like autumn wheat, falling in pieces. In the rear, the charge of the wolf cavalry had already penetrated the defense line of the mechanical legion, and the brutal bite of the steppe wolves, coupled with the weapons at hand of the player, destroyed the mobile force of the mechanical legion in a mess. The enthusiasts who wanted to launch an armed jeep realized that the car couldn't hit it anyway, and the internal wiring had been cut off by the infiltrated rats. Gunshots raged and the fire blazed into the sky, and the entire battlefield was chaotic. Elder Sally watched the fighting around him, and just turned around to solve the nearby enemy. A voice suddenly sounded behind him. Amitabha Buddha, don't go for the benefactor, your opponent is me. King Kong folded his hands together, his expression was indifferent, and there was a tactical eyepiece on his eye socket. At this moment, he was scanning Elder Sally to evaluate his combat effectiveness. Elder Sally is furious at the moment. If it were a pure combat mechanical army, it would be able to stabilize the formation and launch a counterattack. But these pet gadgets of Link are really annoying, and they are too numerous to guard against. Once they rush into the army, they will destroy the formation. It will take at least half an hour for Mechanic City to come from the Grand Canal of Goria. But now, the Mechanical Legion is being flanked back and forth. In this case, it is too difficult to support for half an hour. Seeing a talking metal gorilla in this situation, who is in a good mood? Elder Sally subconsciously regards the King Kong with tactical eyepieces as a mechanical unit, and subconsciously casts evil anger towards King Kong. An inferior metal product, trying to call me an opponent. Elder Sally used data intrusion subconsciously, but after trying it out, he found that he could not invade King Kong's intelligence system, and he was immediately dumbfounded. Elder Sally is a leader in the Iron Elder Council in magnetic armor, legion combat, and system invasion. He didn't expect that there would be a system he couldn't invade. The color of his eyes changed again. After analyzing the whole body of King Kong, he found that this guy was completely an iron knot, not a smart machine unit. An orangutan, but purely made of metal. This is the legendary, elemental creature. That has to be the case. The steel throne at Sally's feet slowly floated, and 4 dark magnets flew out from below the throne. Under Sally's random manipulation, they arranged around King Kong and surrounded him. In the next second, an electromagnetic force was transmitted to the 4 floating magnets, and they began to revolve around the diamond at high speed. At the same time, Sally's long-range link is still controlling the mechanical warrior to command the rear battle. Relying on the Fanatic's primary chip linkage, it can finally be regarded as blocking the large-scale charge of the Wolf Cavalry. At this moment, the Fanatics on the battlefield form an offensive and defensive attitude in large and small arrays. The mercenaries took cover from it and brought back the aura that was gradually losing ground. On the other side, a lot of long-range firepower also began to shift the muzzle, and began to move towards the long-overdue shadow ground troops from a distance. The value on King Kong's tactical eyepiece soared, and at this moment Sally's combat effectiveness had exceeded 100,000, and it was even growing. It's so strong that 100,000 is not enough. As soon as the voice fell, King Kong felt his body's breath burning, and his body temperature was rising rapidly. In a moment, half of his body was burned to flush. The 4 rotating electromagnets around formed an overheated vortex. Sally wanted to melt the diamond directly. Metal creatures, dare to run in front of me and do not know what to do. Sally stretched out his hand, a majestic magnetic field gushing out of the magnetic armor, firmly fixing the diamond in place, a magnetic cage. King Kong couldn't move, his body seemed to have lost contact with consciousness. However, the eddy current formed by the rapid rotation of the 4 magnets continued. King Kong could feel a wave of heat heating inside his body, and he felt melted. In Vajra's heart, he recites the Buddhist scriptures silently, and the red body is gradually immersed in a golden light of Dharma, protecting the body. However, the niche relic that you carried close to your body was not so lucky. It echoed the golden light of Dharma generated by the diamond chanting, but it could not resist the high temperature. The golden light gradually dissipated, the relic also turned into powder, and the body that gradually merged with the diamond melted into one. What's bullying a metal orangutan? Let it go and fight me. Sally suddenly found a person standing next to the scrap tank, casually leaning on the tank, playing with 2 daggers in his hands. Sally is like a big enemy, with magnetic armor and a steel throne under him, running at full power, and his combat power is at its peak. This man who was one-on-one with the mechanical pioneers did not lose the wind, but he had the lives of several mechanical elders in his hands. If you relax a little, you may be in a different place. Link's damage to the mechanical city is the first since the establishment of the mechanical city. Link, you actually ended up personally. While talking to Link, Sally began to ask for permission through the elder-level chip, manipulated the muzzles of the remaining tanks, rocket launchers, and armored vehicles, and slowly turned towards Link. Link looked at King Kong with a pained expression and his blood volume was falling, and said again, "I don't usually say twice." At this moment, the restricted King Kong suddenly said, "I can handle it, I have a fate." Link met the crystal-clear eyes of King Kong and looked at its golden light. "You are sure you can handle it?" "If you can handle it, I will leave." King Kong nodded slightly and wore the Buddha niche relics with him for several months. During the battle just now, it blended with the Buddha's light of King Kong, and because of the high temperature, it melted into powder and merged with the semi-fused King Kong. King Kong, who has always been in the dark blue quality, seems to have touched the edge of the shackles and the chance of promotion. This opportunity is precisely Sally, the elder of the Iron Council of Mechanical God. At the same time, a prompt and a task suddenly appeared in the Link system. King Kong seems to have grasped the chance of promotion. "Sally and King Kong are destined, please do not interfere with King Kong. You got the B-level mission Cry Valley victory. Task reminder, Shadow needs a great victory to boost morale, and you also need a big victory to establish the reputation of Shadow's supreme commander. Win this battle." Link's name resounds through the mountains and throughout the desert, making the mechanical gods and the Wasteland Gang is terrified. Task reward, 300,000 experience, influence of the Waste Saturn +1, title Desert Emperor. After Link saw the task, he fully believed in King Kong. Since it says it can solve it by itself, there is definitely no problem. After this hurdle, King Kong will be Link's first pet that has been independently upgraded from excellent quality to epic level. But Link glanced at Sally, and said coldly, "You didn't save me face when I said just now. I am very upset. I suggest you look back." As soon as the words fell, the dragon-touching god suddenly broke out of the ground. The huge body brought a strong sense of oppression, and the figure of several tens of meters became a giant on the court. How could Sally forget this thing? When in the Machine City, this thing finally appeared, easily destroying the defense line of the bunker beside the Grand Canal of Goria, digging a hole to help Link get out of trouble. After touching the dragon god appeared, because the front and back were in a mess at the moment, the poisonous fog could easily hurt himself by accident, so he aimed at the missile launcher and other large remote facilities, and the place he passed was a mess. Afterwards, the creeping body, cluster of insects dance plus dragon guard, summoned a vast swarm of insects from the ground, which was even more terrifying than the Kuroshio formed by the rats. Link smiled slightly. www.mtlnovel.com. Ignoring Sally, he walked away straight away with his hands behind his back. Sally's face is extremely ugly. One is because the appearance of the dragon god completely broke his hope of coming to the mechanical city. Second, because the muzzle that was quietly turned just now, there was no response after starting the attack command. The system showed that these weapons were all corroded and could not be fired. Sally raised his hand cannon and pointed it at Link's back. The energy beam began to condense. Your opponent is me. King Kong's tone was indifferent, and the entire battlefield's golden masterpiece in the next second was as bright as daylight. People in Shadow and Red Dragon's back seemed to see a rising golden sun on the horizon. Surrounded by the Sanskrit sound of the King Kong body, the golden bells are bursting. Behind the golden sun, a phantom golden Buddha faintly appears. Link's system interface was swiped by information. Your pet King Kong has some feelings. The level is upgraded to LV35+, boss. Your pet King Kong is integrated with magnetic energy and Buddhist altar relics, and its quality is upgraded to epic level, purple. Your pet King Kong, comprehend the Tathagata palm, 5 welcoming Buddha in the west. Your pet King Kong, comprehend the Tathagata palm, 6 Buddhism shines. Your pet King Kong, comprehend the Tathagata palm, 7 heavenly Buddha comes to the world. As for the elder of the Iron Council Sally, Link no longer needs to look. An LV40, elite, elder, facing LV35, the leader, the strength of both sides is not at the same level. Hanging. P.S. Ask for monthly ticket for recommended ticket. Monster Synthesis Master Chapter 450. The high bonuses brought by the leader template are worlds apart from the elite template, which Link has personally experienced. The elite template can only be said to be the limit that an ordinary NPC can reach, but getting a leader template means that you have expertise in a certain area, and there must be epic skills corresponding to your strength. Not counting template expertise, just talking about the strength gap brought by epic skills, this is already crushing. The level 5 gap is only a drop in the ocean in the face of such comprehensive data of high and low quality. Both sides of the battlefield were all stunned by this shining golden light, raising their hands to cover their eyes, but involuntarily cast their eyes to the center of the light. The light suddenly converged, and the hands of the Vajra were formed into Vajra prongs, and the whole body was gilded like a golden Buddha. And above the King Kong, the golden light in the night sky condenses into a spiritual and virtual Buddha. The details are vivid. A solemn, majestic, and heavy force descended from the sky, oppressing sentient beings. Elder Sally felt that the air above his head became sticky, and the indexes monitoring air pressure and gravity on the magnetic armor were soaring, reaching an incredible level, like a mountain being forced under pressure. Click, click. The magnetic armor connected by electromagnetics now made a sound similar to cracking beans, and the magnetic metal was slightly deformed under high pressure. The steel thrown underneath also made a crunching sound, touching the ground and depositing downward. The iron throne runs at full power, and the current surges like an electric spider, forming a small force field to resist the gravity falling from the sky. Link turned his head and glanced at the King Kong, which was combined with the Buddha's niche relic, and saw the latest state of King Kong. Monster attributes. Name, King Kong. Quality, purple. Race, human. Attributes, metal affinity, psychic affinity. Level, 35+, leader. Comprehension skill 1, Tathagata Palm LV7, 9 style Tathagata Palm. King Kong comprehends the 7, each has its effect. Initial skill 2, Arhat's Fury LV5, King Kong enters Arhat mode, the body changes from silver to gold, body size increases by 500%, skill damage bonus is 100%, cooling time is 5 days. Initial skill 3, promote Buddhism. Vajra is well versed in Buddhist scriptures, all Buddhist items can increase the speed of Vajra practice. Initial skill 4, quoting scriptures. Vajra quoting different scriptures, you can get buffs in different states of the scriptures. Initial skill 5, tactical eyepiece. Through the tactical eyepiece, the opponent's combat intent can be converted into specific combat values. Evaluation: My Buddha is merciful, King Kong Arhat. Not to mention the fully assisted voice worm. King Kong's skills are a bit less compared to Gargoyle and Dragon Touch, only 5. However, Link keenly discovered that the original initial skill 1 has now become comprehensive skill 1, and the 7-type Tathagata palm mastered by King Kong is classified as a skill, and the actual number of skills is only less. At the same time, the attributes of King Kong have also changed. In addition to the initial metal affinity, a new Shinic affinity has been added. In the setting of destiny, the energy generated through the resonance of faith, such as the Holy Light and Buddha Light, are roughly classified as psychic energy. This also means that King Kong has formally realized the true meaning of Buddha and can rely on faith to strengthen itself. After reading the data and evaluation of King Kong, Link suddenly came up with a new idea. King Kong is now an Arhat, and he now has the fetters function in the Zerg nest. Is it possible to consider giving King Kong Lalan a bond? Link has even thought of the target of fetters, either a dragon or a tiger, so he can make a long dragon Arhat or falling tiger Arhat. Elder Sally was resisting fiercely, and the magnetic field he created drained all the pressure out, fighting for breathing space for himself. King Kong's palms banged together, and the golden light between the palms agitated, and his body suddenly increased. The figure of about 2 meters soared to 10 meters, the muscles knotted, and the whole body was golden. It did not give people a feeling of tyrannical beasts, but it was like a spring breeze, slowly and gentle. Elder Sally struggled to contend with the Buddha's light at the end of the battle. Now this golden ape is soaring, and the momentum of his body follows his height. Elder Sally's magnetic armor even calculates that the surrounding energy is absorbed by the opponent and turned into its own strength. He had never seen such a weird and powerful creature. And it is these strange creatures that are raging on the battlefield at this moment, and they all come from the same person, Link. Donor, you are predestined with my Buddha, and I have a predestined relationship with me. I can break through life and death, fit relics, and cross the 3,000 Ganges. The donor is indispensable. My Buddha is compassionate, and I will repay any kindness. As an Arhat, I will send you a Buddha to move the mountains and rivers. I wish you early bliss. As soon as King Kong made his move, he carried a thunderous momentum. The hands are not moved to make the fundamental seal, which contains great compassion, and the thunder is rolling on the head. The next second, the earth shook and roared, and the gobi cracked and overflowed with dense cracks. Under the palm of King Kong, golden light swept the gobi. Flying sand and rocks, full of smoke. The entire battlefield was plunged into dust for a while, and visibility to the naked eye was extremely low. Near the center of the battle, an electric arc can be seen in the dust. Link simply used the Eye of the Beast skill on King Kong and watched the live broadcast directly in the first person. King Kong's Buddha moves mountains and rivers blasted down, but was blocked by Sally with an electromagnetic force field. Mars was scattered all over the ground with electric current, looming in the dust, quite spectacular. Donor, you have distracting thoughts in your heart, you are nostalgic for the world, and you should be cautious about it. You really shouldn't. I'll help you purify it. Buddha moves mountains and rivers. Boom. There was another roar, golden light and electric light coexist. People in the dust can only see lightning and thunder in the dust like thick clouds in the distance. In Link's first perspective, King Kong slammed his palm, and Sally took the steel throne and sank 3 points underground. The arc surging on the surface of the magnetic shield is almost a sign of collapse. However, the edge of the steel throne underneath has been distorted due to pressure. The donor's anger becomes a demon, and there are signs of dying illness. My Buddha is compassionate, and I was met by me today. It is you and me. Come, the donor must not resist, let me come and die for you. Every sentence of King Kong is extremely gentle, and he speaks the most poignant words in the most serious tone. The contrast is immediately obvious. Come on, Buddha moves the mountains and rivers. Boom! The roots of the magic are deep, and more efforts are needed. Buddha moves mountains and rivers. Boom! I didn't expect to be able to survive, then. Buddha moves mountains and rivers. Boom! In the end, King Kong didn't even know what to say, his tall body stood on top of Sally's head, and his palms alternated in succession. Electric light, sparks, and golden light constitute the ultimate impression of tonight for everyone participating in the war. Even the huge, terrifying-looking dragon-touching god is not as eye-catching as King Kong. When the smoke and dust completely dissipated and the sound of iron strikes disappeared, everyone hadn't recovered from the atmosphere just now, and the phantom sound of clang, clang, clang involuntarily sounded in their heads. Sally's electromagnetic force field is very strong, but facing the attendant King Kong, he slapped the Steel Council elder to death without feeling any problem. King Kong looked at the pile of broken copper and iron, and nodded in satisfaction. Amitabha Buddha, congratulations to the benefactor for breaking away from obsession and reaching bliss. After saying that, he stood aside and began to recite the mantra. A broken soul slowly rose from the broken copper and iron, like a phosphorus fire that burned out of thin air, and disappeared in a moment. The mechanical elders and the mechanical pioneers are almost the same. They have transformed their bodies. More than 80% of their bodies have abandoned the physical body, leaving only the key and irreplaceable, or technically unable to break through the matched organizational structure, and believe in electronic and mechanical immortality. The result of this is the loss of the body and the incompleteness of the soul. The biggest enemy on the frontal battlefield has been solved, and the mechanical legion has been riddled with holes by the wolf cavalry. In addition, these pets of Link haven't participated in the war for a long time, and they feel resentment for the last time they took only a few pets to the Machine City and the Death Quagmire. This time, take this opportunity to vent. There is almost no place where Link can take action. In a battle of thousands of people, when King Kong awakens and promotes, and the Wushuang is opened, everything can be said to be devastating. Donor, you are predestined with my Buddha, I will come here for you. The donor in front runs slowly, don't fall, otherwise it will be ominous to die tragically. Everyone, meeting is the fate. Instead of being tortured by the three poisons of greed, anger, and ignorance in the world, it is better to go to paradise as soon as possible. King Kong walked all the way and killed all the way, every time it was different. The sense of ritual and conviction is very strong, not joking or ironic, but sincerely considering helping the other party to relieve them. Link couldn't help muttering, where is the person who is destined for Buddhism? This is simply the person who is destined everywhere. When the gunshots faded and the fire diminished, only a few enemies were left on the battlefield to resist, but before he could finish his hard words, he was rushed to kill by players with red eyes and madness. Link doesn't even have to worry about leaving behind the net fish on the battlefield. A battlefield scavenger like a player will never miss any experience. Link waved his hand and recalled all pets. Pets are not needed for the remaining finishing work, and they can leave the field first. You complete the B-level mission Cry Valley Victory. You gain 300,000 experience, the influence of the Waste Saturn +1, get the title Desert Emperor. The 300,000 experience of the mission, if it were a day ago, Link may still be a treasure. But just now in a huge battle of thousands of people, Link's pets are the main output, plus the steppe wolves under the player's crotch are also Link's pets, causing damage and killing, experience will be counted. Link's head. And when Link is too far away to enjoy, these experiences will be added to Steppenwolf himself. So this is Link's skill. Let the player spend money or loan to rent his pets, and the maintenance afterwards is also under his industry chain. Even the player takes the Steppenwolf out to do the experience of killing monsters, which can also be enjoyed and upgraded. The strength of is somewhat similar to the integration of free animal breeders, trainers, and nanny. After this battle of 10,000 people, Link gained 3 million experience alone. Such a comparison of the 300,000 task reward is indeed a drop in the bucket. Glancing at the experience pool that has returned to 1 million, now lying obediently with 3.8 million experience, Link can't help but exhale a sigh of breath. Suddenly the waist is not sore and the legs are not painful, and he is confident again. On the profile page, the influence has also become 11 points. Link focused on the new title, and it was a one-line introduction to get started. The Emperor of the Desert, resounding through the mountains and across the desert. After defeating the Mechanical Legion head-on, Shadow demonstrated his strength against the Mechanical Cult and the Wasteland Gang. At the same time, the strength of the two illegal organizations was damaged, and the minions were put away. You have used this battle to establish who is the true Emperor of the Desert. In the future, members of the Mechanic Cult and the Wasteland Gang will be discouraged when they hear your name. Desert Emperor, inflict an additional 20% damage on all hostile forces in the Gale Desert. There is a chance to impose a deterrent effect on the enemy during battle. Link's eyes lit up, and the effect of this title was a little bit bullish. An additional 20% increase in damage to all enemies in the desert, and a chance to release a deterrent effect. Deterrence is a regular effect in the game of Destiny, similar to bleeding, stiffness, poisoning, sluggishness, and coma. The effect is that the attack defense is reduced by a percentage. As for the specific reduction ratio, it depends on the level difference and strength. The three persons in charge of the Underground Research Center came to Link with worship in their eyes. Link said before that the large defensive field will soon come in handy. In the past few days, the mechanical army ransacked the house directly. The three were extremely shocked by Link's bold and accurate predictive ability. Then came the affirmation of the effect of the large-scale defensive force field, which was able to completely prevent the deterrent subsonic ground-to-surface missiles, and the electromagnetic cluster of the Elders of the Iron and Steel Council could also be completely blocked. These things that were once the most serious threat to Shadow disappeared from now on, and the boulder that sank in Dr. Ludwig's heart was finally removed. Helen's clever eyes kept focusing on the mechanical elder who was photographed to pieces by King Kong. Link looked at these persistent eyes, and suddenly his heart moved. Helen, the remains of the Iron Throne and the mechanical elders are handed over to you. Helen's eyes suddenly brightened, bright and excited, and he jumped up excitedly. Really, give it to me? Well, on this battlefield, there is anything else you like, just go up and point it out, and it will be shipped to you afterwards. Helen's joy was beyond words, her eyebrows and the corners of her mouth were almost flying, and she bowed to Link. Thank you, boss. Link nodded slightly, and then said to Ludwig and Dave, the same is true for you. www.mtlnovel.com. Seeing something you want to study, even if you ask, these soldiers will move to the Underground Research Center later. Of course, if the three of you fancy one thing at the same time, the priority is Helen. Link did not shy away from putting his respect for Helen on the bright side. Ludwig and Dave's faces were cheerful. After all, their combined ages are both in 3 digits, and Shadow's scientific research is not available. Now that Helen is a good seedling and a granddaughter, he is naturally relieved by the respect. The three of them were like grandmothers entering the discounted morning market. Their eyes were green like weasels, and they began to pick and choose. They waved to the soldiers beside them, and they were unhappy about wrapping this one and the other. While weeping for the great victory in the valley, the mechanic city, which had been driving halfway through the desert, suddenly spewed strong steam and stopped with a strong and harsh brake sound. After a short pause in the desert, it returned to Goria in the opposite direction. Grand Canal. Mechanical Giant, Pioneer Laboratory. The mechanical pioneer skull helmet had no expression on his face, but anyone could feel the low air pressure around him and the green complexion. At the other end of the holographic picture in front of him, was the Wasteland Gang seat. The people inside are like a mirror, all with Sima faces who are hesitant to speak. Pioneer, we regret the decision. The alliance between us has come to an end. This battle has caused us to suffer huge losses because of your intelligence errors. Then we will not risk putting the command of the mercenaries in your hands. The mask of the mechanical pioneer was as cold as ice, and his voice was cold to the bone. It's a pity. In just a few words, it was declared that the Desert Coalition forces that had been allied for several months fell apart.